Let this be a reminder to you all that this organization will not tolerate failure.
The side of the federal building has been blown off. Jesse?
They believe they were part of a CIA project called MK Ultra.
Just like a segment of society that is not living in reality.
In a certain sense, we're kind of a little bit more Israel's vassal state.
There are police chiefs facilitating prostitution networks.
Do you understand? It's all in your head. It's your move.
That's weird. Do you hear that still?
Yeah, that was
what
strange.
The fuck is going on?
I don't know.
Oh, were you listening it to on something?
Oh, yeah, I might have had it a little
Oh, okay. I was like, how is that still going? Okay, sorry guys, threw that off. What's up, guys? Welcome to the morning dump. Today is both of us. Oh, I'm retarded. I think I have it going in another tab right now, and that's what's playing. So people are like, is this guy schizophrenic probably? All right, give me a second. I got to go over to the tab. I think I know what I did. I accidentally unmuted it on Rumble because I keep Rumble running. That way I can keep track of Rumble rants because that's the only way to do it since for some reason StreamYard doesn't integrate it into the chat. So, by the way, Jack Burton says new intro. No, I don't know where the fuck you been. That's Austin's version of the intro. We need to get maybe I'm getting a little bit too demanding. But I need to get maybe a version for when we come together for the morning dumps. Okay, some sort of that way it's like a both cut. But whatever. Maybe we're just being greedy. Either way, we can just come to days like this. We can just pick one. I kind of like this. If anything, I'm partial to days that I do it with you to do yours, just because I hear mine all the time. So it's like they're both bops. It's just that I don't know. Yeah, it is Laney's work. Ethan says Laney's work. Both are Laney's work, I believe. Trying to think of the first one. Yeah. They're both Laney edits. Yep. Although I will say, if you guys haven't caught on, Jolly on Klebold, Jim Tuttle, whatever you want to call it, he is he's my video guy these days. So I'm getting a lot of intros from him, and also like clips and shorts and stuff like that. So he's on the payroll now. So that's what you guys are paying for over at patreon.com/NoWayJose2020. You guys will see one tonight on an Already Dead. I'll have another super cut. By the way, I totally dropped the ball again. I forgot to get William Ramsey, but oh well, whatever. We're both going to talk to him this week. One of us can probably say in passing, like, hey, do you want to come on this next week? So, sure. I don't know, whatever. But yeah, guys, we're here today. We're with you. It is, February 25th. We have a lot to get to talk to you guys about. Tomorrow we have tinfoil hats. That we're doing. So we're doing a little bit of prep today. So we're doing a little show prep. I thought that was pretty cool. We were going to do some notes with you guys, I think. But we had plenty to go through before that. But it's a pleasure to be with you, Austin. How you doing, bud?
Man, all is well, brother. I'm just kind of trying to assess the media cycle as we stand today, right? It seems like it's, of course, never ending, and so we consistently have things to talk about, which is good for us. But at the same time, man, like when I mentioned yesterday, because Bongino got appointed officially as deputy director.
Yeah,
and
he's going to crack down on that one country in the Middle East is blackmailing us. Well, we don't know which one yet, but he's going to look into it.
Meanwhile, he's essentially been this long time limited hangout in a way, right? And as far as I'm concerned, I mean,
he's always struck me that way. I just don't get it. I know I have lots of people that I respect and I like and I'm even friendly with that I'm like that are just fucking. By the way, for the audio listeners, that's like a filleting sound. That's what that is. But like for Cash and Bongino, which both of which I get. Like I understand the argument that they are better. Sure. Yeah. Like they're better than the alternative, better than what we've had before. I completely agree with that. But like the idea that like, oh my fucking god, fucking Bongino. You're like,
right.
What is wrong with you people? Like what? Like I mean, cool. I mean, like I will say, cool. Like this is, but just I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just that I don't know. Maybe it's just that like it's I don't. I guess we've been so jaded by being so fucked for so long that I guess when you get like a small W of something that's slightly better, you're like, holy fuck. That's the only thing I can really think. I guess, and that's fair. To be fair, I guess I will give Trump the slightest bit of credit that like this. I will say, at least the past a couple of month or two since he took over, it's like this has. I will say it's been more optimistic, better, even from my perspective than like anything I recall ever. So far as any major politician or anything, does that mean I trust them? No, I am skeptical. Maybe I've just read too much to where I'm just too skeptical that I'm like, well, I'm great. You guys are doing cool stuff, but like, I know you're probably going to fuck me at some point. So like, I'm just chilling until then. So I don't know. It is I don't know. Any thoughts, I guess, before we actually get into some real stories? I get it. Like it's on one hand, I get it. Cause it is like, it is a positive advancement. Like these people's stances are generally better than what we've had in the beginning. So like, but or in the past, but like, they still kind of suck. At least I will say with Bongino. At least I don't know about Cash. I mean, I will say Cash. The little bit I know about him, I do know he's like a big Israel lover. Which like, okay, whatever.
They all
he's been in politics since like the 20-teens at least. I mean, as far as I know, I don't know a ton about him. I know he was big in like the kind of being good on the like the FBI shitting on Trump and stuff or fucking with Trump type deal. So that, I mean, I know he's good in that regard. So that's something, but that's really about all I fucking know about this guy. Aside from him, I know nothing other than I make a silly Pajit joke and everything every now and then. That's about about it. Like I don't know anything about this guy.
By the way, that's a reality to kind of include. Just as far as understanding the political implications and the political capital of
Jack says he eats poo.
of an Indian representative in the administration. That's all I'm saying is that people don't realize like the importance of that. There has to be these sort of, demographic representatives. It's like it's strange, but it is like very important in the political landscape of inclusivity with certain regimes. And I think that's but also keep in mind, man, like you already know that the sort of the way that I view these things is basically that one side accomplishes what the other cannot, and it's so clearly what takes place more often than not is that it's like Horton's law, like Scott Horton likes to say, right? They only ever follow through on their worst promises, and they always essentially they never actually pursue the best of their promises while they're campaigning, and that's typically always the case. But still, like I get exactly what you're saying, but again, my mind goes to these sort of background narratives that once you become aware of them and are exposed to the reality of like how they potentially could be compromised. I mean, Bongino, his partner at the Secret Service flew on Ron Burkle's Air Fuck One, apparently. And I had no idea that was a reality until I saw something that Richard Booth was like commenting on Twitter. And I was reading through that thread for a minute, and I didn't realize that, of course, Ron Burkle is listed in Epstein's book and flew with him regularly. So there's another connection there, essentially because Bongino was a Secret Service agent for Clinton himself.
Did you see his clip? Did you see Bongino's clip recently? I guess it was somewhat in response, it sounds like, because I think he addressed it in the clip to... All right, there were two clips that kind of here, just to back up for the viewers, the listeners here. Maybe you probably know what I'm talking about, Austin, because you're kind of terminally online like me. But there was that initial one that was a joke I made. I was riffing off of about Bongino not knowing, which there was a clip from Tim Pool, which I think you even addressed it yesterday on your show. Yeah. There was a clip where like he was on Tim Pool, and I'm assuming it was from a while ago. I don't know if it was recent, but I assume it just kind of was doing the rounds just because it was, he got announced as deputy director of the FBI. And anyways, they're in that thing. He was kind of like, they were talking. He was like, "Oh, I heard that they got blackmail, and that this guy's working for some other country, and like some country in the Middle East, and like I don't know who, but like and you're like." I don't know. Actually, I don't know if he said I don't know who, but he just like he didn't say it. Like he said some country in the Middle East, but it's like We know, but then there's also, I guess there's actually 3 videos here. There's another like short 5-second like clip that got shared around where like it was from something. I have no idea who. To be fair to him, I don't know. This could have been from forever ago. But either way, it still was like, holy fuck, this is telling. There was that one clip where it was someone said, "So what? Tell me, just kind of like a quick. So tell me what probably like one of the number one dear to your heart item like things that out there." And he's just it was someone kind of like just giving like probably one of those like 5-minute quick type interviews that or someone will give. It wasn't like a what we do like a deep podcast because it clearly was like an on the fly kind of like one of those like boilerplate questions. And then he's like, and he's like, well, I mean. Israel, the defense of Israel, and I was like, that's the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay, and the one that I actually was ultimately referencing
is it's laughable that anyone believes that once you're named as an official in a presidential administration, you don't come out on the other end with a vast amount of profit. Like, are you kidding me? The financial benefit of lining your pockets in a presidential administration is the point. But
what I was getting to with sorry to cut you up, but before I lost my train, what I was trying to get to the actual video, I just had to give a little exposition to the other 2 videos for it to make sense. Then he said he kind of was responding to those. It seemed like he said some sort of like, oh, people think this or that. He gave this a story about like he didn't directly say it, but he basically directly said it in a roundabout way that essentially basically one of his Secret Service friends or someone he knew was someone on Air Force One with Bill Clinton and Epstein. And apparently he got, supposedly the story was that guy got sent home because he was like, I'm not comfortable with whatever's going on there. He did say it in like a way of like, he didn't know, it's not like he has anything damning. He's like, but he just saw like they were kind of going to the back of the plane. There were girls who looked a little too young. He felt uncomfortable. God. I guess he then, when they landed, kind of talked to boss or whoever is running the show type. Those like, I don't want to have anything to do with this shit. Like, I don't know the fuck this. Like, this is not. So, like, I'm not gonna have a part in this. And he's like, okay, well then you need to go home. And then they I guess they sent him home wherever they were. So I mean, that's something. I mean, and whether that's true or not, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think Israel probably will come out pretty squeaky clean from this on that side of things. So,
oh my God,
I don't know. I mean, that was a little bit more
taking down the deep state.
Yeah, I mean,
that's just the craziest narrative to me. Like, man, it's frustrating. That's the part that frustrates me. But especially you see Trump talking with the official about gun grabbing, essentially coming off the heels of the Parkland shooting. And it's like, right, as far as just what they couldn't do with Cruz, essentially, because they couldn't take his guns instantly and ask questions later was apparently kind of the framework of how they were discussing the situation. And basically Trump was just saying he was encouraging this representative to clearly pursue right, like scaling back the Second Amendment. I mean, it's legitimately what the fuck he did during the Vegas shooting, man. Like that's my biggest issue with Trump, is that he accomplishes more against various conservative principles than even Obama was capable of. It's kind of insane. And that's where I view it, as far as the pendulum swinging, where one side can accomplish what the other side cannot. And therefore you have this duality that consistently sort of leads us down the same mutual direction, right? Where these mutual interests align at the end of the day. And it's always, at the expense, right, of the United States taxpayer. And so here we are in the modern serfdom, right?
Yeah. And I guess we'll see how this goes. Well, with that, let's get into some actual content. Let's get into some anti-war stuff. Here's, I guess, on the note of where Trump's not so great. Here's Gaza ceasefire deal. That it's on the brink of collapse to Netanyahu's hard stance. The Netanyahu, they're still delaying the release of 600 Palestinians. I think you were on here. Maybe you weren't, but we definitely covered in the morning dump at some point the ins and outs. There was recently, they released twice as many hostages Hamas did in the expectation of, this was like kind of a multiple pronged. It was kind of like part of the deal was that like, hey, I believe that was supposed to be so they could get construction equipment and mobile homes. Supposedly that did happen. I don't know. Maybe I won't be the least bit surprised if we get an update that one, or that wasn't entirely what happened, or they only let some or something. But that also was supposed to then, in turn, I believe it was supposed to be even roughly around the same time that Israel was supposed to release 600 Palestinian prisoners. They said essentially they took their prisoners, their side of the deal, and then they just said, nope, we're not giving the 600 Palestinians. They dragged their feet. They had initially, referenced some sort of ceasefire violations. I don't know what it specifically. That's kind of ludicrous if you've been following along this. Hamas, as far as I know, hasn't. And even if you are accusing them of breaking ceasefire, it's like, all right, it's kind of the biblical passage about like what the splinter in someone's eye while you have the beam in yours. It's like, I don't think you really should be accusing anyone of violating ceasefires right now. But that's where they're still delaying it. And now he's saying, I guess he's really sticking on that his reasoning being, as pathetic as this is the handover ceremony. So apparently this has been a thing with these hostage things that Hamas has been like kind of making a ceremony out of it, I guess, which frankly, I kind of like it. I mean, I guess I don't know the specifics of these ceremonies. That makes sense to me because it's like, for one, you're going to want to make a public show to be like, this is happening. So it's like a public area. So it's a way. I mean, this is like a big thing happening. It's part of a big deal that's supposed to secure peace. So, but either way, they're not liking it because kind of the impression from the outside looking in from a lot of people is, they're returning people. There's a lot of times where people are even like hugging and kissing the Hamas and like, thanking they're in good condition, like stuff like that. I mean, so it's kind of, they're not liking that. And then I think on the flip side, when they're releasing people, it's kind of the opposite, where they're coming back as fucking looking like Holocaust victims and shit. So it's kind of like people, it's one of those things where people are like, what the fuck? So, I mean, this is kind of Netanyahu just raging against reality. But, I mean, that kind of doesn't really make a difference when it comes to the brass tacks of what's going on here. Either way, it looks like they're dragging feet. He said, unfortunately, there are people in the government who are more interested in Hamas ceremonies than they are in returning civilians for burial in Israel, is what an Israeli official said. I guess they're saying that Hamas agreed that the release of the 4 bodies can be done in private. There was something that they asked for in return for the 600. I was trying to see if I could see in there. I can't recall. Sorry, I was trying not to read the whole article for you guys. They would only release. Okay, now they're saying that Israel will only release now once they receive all the bodies, because apparently I believe, and honestly, this kind of almost seems like they sort of played Hamas if you think about it, because essentially the way this last hostage, because I think it was something like 3 or 4 they were giving it every time, and they upped it for the last one. But that then used up all the living hostages. So now the only hostages left are dead ones, which I don't think is a ton. But either way, now it's like, now you aren't going to have... It's kind of weird to have this issue with a ceremony when there aren't even any living ones anymore anyways. So it is, once again, this is another non-issue, because it's like there's not even going to be any more ceremonies aside from... I don't know, would you really want to do a ceremony for a body? I don't know, that kind of makes you look bad. So... I don't know. It's bizarre. I guess now they're saying, oh, now it's once they receive the bodies, but it's kind of, they just keep reneging on the deal essentially, and just over and over. So that's where we're at. So I mean, there's so many violations here on the Israeli side that it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, even the fact that I don't believe we've actually started any sort of negotiation yet on the second phase is already in and of itself a violation. So.
Right.
That's where we are. It looks like it may fall apart. Let's hit one more thing on the, and I guess I'm a third real quick. Israel is now kind of upping. We already knew they were upping in the West Bank, but there was something, I heard a story, I think yesterday, something like 40,000 people are displaced, and they're telling them basick fuck off, don't come back.
Yeah, you can't come back, yeah.
So they said something like a year, but like, let's be real, that means forever. So it almost seems as if they're like almost trying to make things seem like, because the attention's been on Gaza, and because that's which fair enough, because that's where things were crazy bad. But it looks like they're it looks like almost as if they're like, it's like a distraction thing. Like, while eyes are on Gaza, you're like, well, let's kind of do damn near the same thing over in West Bank, because they're even putting in like what is it called? I forget the name of the corridor.
They're probing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and they're escalating and probing deeper into Syria as well, which is clearly, in my mind, a direct escalation as far as these Middle Eastern conflicts are concerned in regard to Israel's, true. It seems like Israel's vision is definitely surrounding Iran in certain ways with right and kind of like putting them on their back foot, and meanwhile you have, I mean, we're heavily sanctioning Iran as well. So right there, I believe Trump just implemented oil sanctions,
Yep.
right on Iran. So
Yeah, which is retarded.
that's
but
just yeah, but I mean, it just goes to show that the escalation, I think, I am concerned that there will be a sort of pivot, and that alone will distract many people from, from
yeah,
what is
they're
taking
on so
place.
many fronts right now where they can kind of just keep on a pivoting because no one's paying attention. Who the fuck's paying attention to Lebanon? Who's paying attention to Syria? Who's paying attention to the West Bank? Everyone's paying attention to Gaza, which makes sense. I mean, there was crazy shit going on in Gaza, but it's like they can kind of like people don't realize like they're just doing they're doing crazy shit over in all those other places too. It's not just Gaza, so it's like. I mean, and every one of them, there's usually some sort of deal or this or that. They're dragging the feet on. They're lying. Like, it's just such a despicable fucking nation. At least, the very least, the people. Not the people, but like the higher ups, like the government or whatever. I'm sure there are people that are great. But even then, though, it's kind of a country wrapped up in like wartime fervor. So even then, like, they're probably not that great. But like, it's just gross because it's just like every single like every it's I can't understate the deception of these people. Like they'll like Hamas, they'll be like, oh, look at Hamas, he's a horrible, a subhuman fucking terrorist, and it's like, yeah, but like if you look at the details on the ground of what's going on, look at the prisoners. All these accusations of rape. Really, where is it really actually? Where is this really more seated on? What side is this really more seated on? When it comes to following agreements, who's following their agreements? Is it Hamas or is it Israel? Is it Israel or is it Lebanon? Is it Israel or is it Syria? Is it Israel or I guess there's no agreement in West Bank. But I mean, hell, in Lebanon, I guess Syria, there's no agreement. But in Lebanon, they had some sort of ceasefire type thing too, and they've done the same exact thing they've done to Gaza, except maybe even in some ways more over the top, to where they've just not been basically following it at all. I will say, I think Gaza they killed more people in the ceasefire, but either way, it's still they were supposed to be out of Lebanon like months ago per their own ceasefire agreement, and they're just like, nah. Every single time they're like, not ready.
I know. Yeah.
So,
and just keep moving. And beyond that, man, you have them apparently within the past few days, if not within. I mean, you have for the first time in a very long time, you apparently have Israeli tanks entering the occupied territory of the West Bank, right? And so then you have like legitimate threats and like as far as not threats, but the implication is and the claim is that Israel is, of course, wanting to annex the West Bank by force after the tanks are deployed. So that it again, like this is the ethnic cleansing, the return to ethnic cleansing, right? Which it definitely, I feel like every step of the way, everyone was just entirely expecting Netanyahu to sabotage this from day one, and the Likud, and it's taken place. I mean, it was achieved. So.
All right, we have Screwed Up Rebellion here saying Israel's involvement in Rwanda's invasion of Congo is pretty wild too. I didn't follow that, but I will tell you a fun little factoid. I'm pretty sure I know Ashley St. Clair's PR guy is the guy who ran the PR for Israel for that. Yeah, that was the connection. Yeah, when we covered it, he did PR for Israel, so a lot of people kind of jumped to Mossad. That Ashley St. Clair's Mossad, which I'm gonna be completely frank, I wouldn't be the tiniest bit surprised if she was, but. I mean, I don't know. When you're at that level, I guess it's not that crazy if your PR guy is working, who is a New York Jew, has done work for, that level. I mean, I don't know what the overlap is between like high level influencers and actual doing PR for like country level entities when it comes to the PR world. I have no idea, but I feel like I could understand there being a crossover there. All right, let's get to the next story, but real quick, I see aggressively agreeing saying Israel can't afford the optics of prisoners looking sane and well because they all commit suicide a few weeks after they're released. Now, obviously, that I'm assuming that's a joke, but if there's something based in reality there, I have not seen that. If you're seeing prisoners that were released by Hamas, mysteriously dying later, that's right up my alley. Definitely let me know if you see any articles or anything of the like there. But let's get into this. This is Deputy Speaker of Israeli Knesset. So theoretically, if that guy was it was in our government, the Deputy Speaker, what would actually, I don't know if the Deputy Speaker is next in line after the Speaker. I was going to say that put them at like, what, 5th or 4th or something in line for presidency. But either way, that's like high as fuck up. Nassim Vatouri, he has called for all adult men in Gaza to be killed. This is like,
Wow.
This is him in quotes. Who was innocent in Gaza? Civilians went out and slaughtered people in cold blood. Vatouri told Call Barama radio, which that's fucking retarded. Because like, if you were out slaughtering people in cold blood, ergo, you're no longer a civilian. And he's referring to October 7th. Like, no, this was Hamas. So, all right, and then he says, we need to separate the children and women and kill the adults in Gaza. We are being too considerate. He also referred to them as subhumans and scoundrels and said no one in the world wants to take them in. This is in quotes. The international community understands that the residents of Gaza are not welcome anywhere and is pushing them towards Israel, which is like a complete retarded framing of the situation. So what else? He said Palestinians are being freed from Israeli jails as part of the Gaza hostage and ceasefire deal. Should be put in Jenin so they could be eliminated later on. This is a city of Jenin in the occupied West Bank, is what he's talking about. So he is talking about that they should send these freed Palestinians to Jenin and then later just wipe out fucking Jenin entirely, which is a city. Wow. An entire fucking city. He says, erase Jenin. Don't start looking for the terrorists. If there's a terrorist in the house, take him down. Tell the women and children to get out, Vatouri said. Last year, he said there were no innocents in Gaza and called for the entire place to be burned down so Israeli soldiers won't get hurt. Here's another quote. What does it mean to burn? To go in and rip them apart. There should be no thoughts, no considerations. The soldiers of the IDF should not think for 1 second and be hurt because we need to be humane, Vatouri said. And then he says the last thing here is that such rhetoric from Israeli officials has been cited in South Africa's genocide case against Israel at the ICC, basically the ICC, the International Court of Justice, to demonstrate Israel's intent to commit genocide. So this is also an outgrowth of what this is like a precursor to why there's an arrest warrant for Netanyahu as well. Mm-hmm. These statements right here, these are the things that uphold the idea that they're committing a genocide. Because I guess it is a hard legal definition. Because it is like technically the problem with genocide is that there's an intent involved there. The idea the intent is to wipe out a people, or it's kind of a dodgy term. But when you have the only what they have to do to be actually get proof of it is they literally take people in positions of power like this guy, considering he's probably in the top 10 most powerful people in the country so far as government. And you take these statements and you find out if there's genocidal rhetoric. That's kind of basically how they prove it. Obviously, you need action behind it as well. We have action, but you need to prove intent. This is how you prove intent. Intent couldn't be any more fucking clear. And this is one of more than a handful of fucking major, Israeli politicians that have said since the beginning of war. This just stands out more because it's more recent. At least the initial ones you can kind of maybe give them some level of forgiveness because you're like, okay, this is kind of the same idea as like post 9/11. There were a lot of people get caught up in it. Okay, maybe to some extent. I think you kind of lose that when you're like the president or like the minister of this or that. You're not just some Joe Schmo. I think you kind of lose that a little bit. But either way, a little bit more understanding. We're way past that. So like, we've been having a ceasefire for months now. So they still have this rhetoric and from the highest levels basically. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I just wanted to share that. I thought that was just kind of once again reaffirmed that like, no, then this is where they're at. This is what Israel's about. This is our greatest ally right here.
Absolutely. And there's another one of our priority allies at this moment. It seems to be Germany in the context of kind of like, if you remember the whenever the pipeline was targeted and sabotaged, right? It was sort of, if you remember, the consequences that directly affected basically the fallout of that was people in Germany were going to freeze to death, essentially. And it's just interesting to me how compromised German leadership in their current regime tends to be, especially considering how man, their laws are so strange, man. They're very dystopian as far as like their freedom of speech. It's very clearly been cycling through the news recently how much they have sort of no real ability to kind of exercise that freedom of speech and in regard to just being arrested and imprisoned for even suggesting anything in even a joking context in regard to Nazi Germany or things of that nature, which is another thing that I consider, like, how many people are unaware that it's illegal to question the Holocaust in certain countries all around the world. And it's more than you would ever imagine. but it makes a lot of sense once you realize that Netanyahu was just invited by the current prime minister, right, to or Chancellor Frederick Merz, right, to in overt defiance of ICC warrant to visit Germany, because he hasn't yet visited Europe since the ICC warrant was officially issued, and so this Germany's next chancellor, of course, invited Netanyahu to the country in defiance of the ICC arrest warrant. And Netanyahu's office said he had a warm conversation with Friedrich Merz, the leader of the Christian Democratic Union, CDU, after the party won the most votes in Germany's national election. Chancellor-designate Merz thanked the prime minister for the conversation, said that he would invite him to make an official visit to Germany in overt defiance of the scandalous International Criminal Court decision to label the prime minister a war criminal. Merz confirmed on Monday that he had invited Netanyahu for a visit. I think it is a completely absurd idea that an Israeli prime minister cannot visit the Federal Republic of Germany, he said during a press conference. So, yeah.
It is ridiculous. I agree. He should be in fucking jail.
Absolutely, man.
Actually, not even. I should honestly, frankly, what was it? Remember how we did what we did to Saddam Hussein? It's literally that should be done. That's what should be done. Which, by the way, Screwed Up Brilliant, you said you can send me a Twitter thread if you're interested. Please do. By the way, I saw your tweet you sent me in my DMs. We have a lot to go through today. I have that in there. I intend on probably covering it sometime soon. That's in the queue. Just probably not going to get to it today. But definitely send me a thread. I'm not sure if you're referring to the Congo thing or if you're referring to something else somebody said earlier. But definitely, feel free to send stuff to me. Tag me on Twitter. DM me. That helps a lot. But let's get into this next thing. This is the last story in the anti-war front that I really wanted to go into, although there were definitely other ones worth going into. There's another story about Iran condemning, Israel, saying they're nukes. I thought that was an interesting one, but we're not going to go through that today. But just the idea that, hey, they're not allowed to have nukes. Israel is. Yet Israel is the one who's literally thrown out the idea of dropping a nuke on Gaza, even though they're technically publicly saying, oh, we don't have nukes. They've also dropped the idea of dropping a nuke on Iran. So it's really, that's the nation that we don't want to have the nukes, and they fucking do. So, if anything, Iran... Honestly, I don't even really feel like that big a deal if Iran had nukes. But let's get into this next story. U.S. votes against UN resolution condemning Russia for Ukraine war. I thought this was interesting just because it kind of showed where things are going. There was a resolution. It says U.S. and Russia are among 18 nations that voted against the Ukrainian drafted resolution at the UN that condemned Moscow and called for a Russian withdrawal on the third anniversary of the invasion. The resolution passed in a vote 93 and 18, with 65 countries abstaining. Now, then the U.S. introduced its own resolution that simply called for peace in Ukraine, but then European countries were able to add an amendment that inserted anti-Russian language. At that point, then the U.S. abstained from voting, but that got passed too. So, either way, it's they abstained. They didn't say no, obviously, because that advanced the narrative they want, which is kind of moving towards Ukraine peace. And whatever, if there's a little bit of anti-Russian language, that'll make it so they won't vote for it, but they won't vote against it at that point. I just thought that was interesting. I got a couple of, I actually shared, not shared, but I have let me see if I can find it real quick. I also have
Did you see that report, though, of the European military chiefs proposing sending 30,000 troops to Ukraine?
No.
And then, of course...
Wait, who is this again? Who? Who'd you say?
Apparently it's numerous European military chiefs proposed this in response to the new Russia plan, as far as the Russia-Ukraine plan, reiterated its opposition to the presence of NATO troops in Ukraine as part of a peace deal, which I just know that Trump has made those mutual assurances that of course, we're going to exploit the rare earth minerals in order to and for a military assurance, basically to remain involved and embedded in Ukraine, is a part of that deal. And so that to me is just like, that's okay. I guess if the fighting ends, that is of course positive, but still,
Yeah.
it's like, if we were remaining there, then how is that you know, any different than sort of a dominant UN presence, which is completely in opposition to what Putin is claiming to desire, you know, as far as in the negotiations. So,
Yeah, and
which
on the
makes all the
I'm
sense in the
sorry.
world, because that was the red line, right? No,
Mhm.
Ukraine can't be brought into NATO. And so I think Trump's workaround was, okay, we'll just leave Americans there then,
Mhm.
you know, which is
Yeah.
interesting. But yeah,
Well,
so meanwhile, you have these European military
Yep.
chiefs who are claiming we need to send 30,000 troops there.
Yeah, and then we have
So I
you
don't
have
know.
European leaders rolling around here too. It's just this kind of seemed to tie into this whole thing, you know, with that, with all this
Yeah.
UN stuff. Then you have on the same. This is from yesterday. You know, so we have leaders arriving Kiev to talk to Zelensky to stay the course, and so we have Canada, Spain, Sweden, Finland, Norway, Denmark, Iceland, Estonia,
Man,
Latvia, Lithuania. Should be
I'm
fair. None of
curious to
those
see what
fucking matter.
happens to Zelensky, you know?
Yeah.
Like, because it
Yeah.
never ends well for these proxy
Yeah.
leaders,
It's
man. I'm just
yeah.
saying.
And then we have then you know, here's another one. There's just another photo op. This one I thought was interesting as it's once again, you know, on the, you know, kind of where you know, on the negotiation side of things, who's offering what. You know, Zelensky is still you know, kind of you know, showing himself as being not a good faith actor in this, which, as I've said before, I don't even think you necessarily need Ukraine to even really agree to do anything. You can kind of just strong arm them through Russia and US. To some extent, it just depends on how much you're willing to strong arm them, how much you're willing to pull away. But either way, it said Zelensky's willing to end the war if Russia surrenders, ousts Putin, and is given NATO membership, which is like all three of those are non-starters, let alone all of them together. But yeah, that's all that's on that front. I just thought it'd be interesting to kind of show the videos of all the world leaders, kind of you know, oh, keep on going. We need more death to fuel our love of Moloch.
Yeah, I
Like,
think it's just too valuable for them as a money laundering scheme, as
Yep.
Bobo McCoy just kind of made the point. It has been very lucrative, clearly, and I don't see that coming to an end. And I think they kind of realized, you know, that they could kind of exploit this even further, I think. And then yeah, so I'm a little bit concerned about how this is actually going to de-escalate
Yeah.
altogether. I don't view an actual, like, you know, removal of U.S. troops from the country. Like, I don't see that in the near future. It's possible,
Yeah,
but
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we end
we're
up with a base or something like that. Like, I get what you, but like,
yeah.
so far as like hostilities, I'm pretty hopeful. I think stopping, but I mean,
Oh
this
yeah,
is kind
no,
of the nature of the military industrial complex. We go to a
yeah.
place, we leave, and then that
Mhm.
leaving consists of, oh, wow, that's weird. We have this forward operating base here now.
Yeah,
Isn't
but
that
yeah,
weird how that
consider
works?
how
What are we gonna do? Get rid of
destabilized.
all of it?
Right.
Yeah.
But like, really think about how destabilized Ukraine has become at this point. You know what I mean? Like, it is basically an entirely war-torn country.
Oh, you see
And
that? My bad. I totally fucking hit.
you're
All right,
good.
we're good. Yeah, we're good. That was
But
weird.
yeah, I just kind of like, it's almost like there's just so much just potential for mercenaries and right, and these right, I just view it as very much of a valuable chess piece going forward in regard to just another border state to provoke Russia anytime it becomes necessary on the world stage. But I don't know. I guess all of that came off the 30,000 troop reference came after British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said he was ready to send British troops to Ukraine, and that was after Hegseth did rule out the idea of a NATO deployment to Ukraine. So apparently, that is within the negotiation tactic. Is like, well, would Putin be willing to, you know, agree to these terms? As far as, well, we won't technically bring them into the UN and NATO, right? And leave these NATO
Well,
troops.
they've talking about leaving a UN peacekeeping group as opposed to a NATO. So
Okay,
that's what that's
interesting.
the latest. I heard that today on Anti-War News. Go check that out. That was
Mm,
the latest I heard. That, like, at least that's what supposedly Trump said. Russia. That's in one of those many articles that's in there. Apparently,
mhm.
Trump said that Russia said that they were okay with a or that Putin said that they would be okay with a UN, and I want to say, or he may have said peacekeeping force, and maybe Dave was explained that like they would be open to a UN but not a NATO. I can't remember if he said explicitly a UN one, but it seems to be that's what was intended. Is that like supposedly saying that like Putin would be okay with a UN one but not a NATO one. Given that
Interesting. Well, I guarantee you we're going to have a permanent footprint there, as we always do. Is that the fucking case?
I mean, do we don't, and as far as I know, it's not like we have bases in Ukraine or anything. And so
we have bases fucking everywhere, dude.
I don't know of any in Ukraine, though. But I mean,
we have a bunch of
I'm sure we have ones bordered them.
We have a bunch of bioweapons, covert laboratories and shit. Yeah,
my point being is they're like it's more of like a front situation, and that's so it's like. I mean, by that logic, like we're everywhere anyway. We're literally everywhere.
I mean, the Maidan Revolution. Clearly, we named their entire administration. So, like, it's our proxy force. We don't even need to have, any sort of like plausible deniability at this point. You know what I mean? Like, we're in direct control of everything happening as far as the U.S. State Department in Ukraine, and at least in my mind, man, I don't see how. There's any way around that being the case, but I don't
I'm
know.
like 60-40 on this one. It sounds like you're like 40-60. It's not like I'm like, whoa.
No, I just don't see like, I'm not saying that, the military conflict won't cease to exist in some sort of like, active fighting force as far as, Russia's, but still, this isn't like a positive end to the conflict in my mind. It's almost as if they achieved most of what they desired to achieve, right? And which was entirely negative. But apparently there was a U.S. backstop, which is deemed essential for this plan and negotiations with Putin, and would likely be based on the extraordinary strength and air power that NATO countries have. It could be in the form of U.S. aircraft based in Poland and Romania, subject to the agreement of President Trump, an official suggested apparently. So I don't know. That's I am like, at the very least, I'm optimistic that the de-escalation is occurring. It's just, what did we expect it to look like, right? It's never going to like meet our principles, I would imagine. So
well, let's get into the next story. We got a Doctori 420. Just a reminder, you guys just tag us. We'll more than likely bring up stuff, as I even just mentioned earlier, from Screwed Up Rebellion. You sent me a DM. I didn't really have time to get to that one yet today, I don't think. Here's from Doctori 420. It says, a prominent French LGBT activist charged with brutally raping a disabled 4-year-old girl is now also suspected of leading a European child abuse ring. Pierre-Alain Cotineau reportedly arranged for pedophiles to rape babies and film the assaults. This is on Redux. Let's see how long this is.
I think Namrock sent that to me, actually. I don't remember.
I guess we could probably run through that real quick. Just read it straight up. Prominent LGBT activist who was recently arrested on charges include the rape of a 4-year-old girl has been discovered to have organized a pedophile network in France. An investigation conducted by the Office of Minors, l'AFIM, a newly created branch of the French National Police, has uncovered a pedophile network that extends from the Loire-Atlantique region to Belgium. Reporting on the revelations, La Parisine neglected to name LGBT activist Pierre-Alain Cotineau as the leader of the criminal organization, choosing instead to refer to him as a 32-year-old family assistant in Loire-Atlantique. Cotineau was well known in Loire-Atlantique for his political activism, which included advocacy for the LGBT community, youth, and minority populations. 2021, he stood for departmental elections under the banner of La France Insoumise, a left-wing political party that has a hardline zero tolerance on sexist, racist, anti-Semitic, or LGBTI-phobic remarks or behavior amongst its members. Okay, so you're the no fun party. Got it. Cotineau, a professional caregiver and family aide, co-founded multiple activist organizations, including the UDON, Solidarity and Mutual Aid Collective, as well as the LGBTQI plus Association of Encenis. In 2018, Cotineau was elected president of the Rainbow Shelter and hosted the community's first ever forum to combat homophobia and transphobia. In addition to his LGBT activism, Cotineau was a member of the Association Lily Saris et Si, an organization which, according to its website, advocates against domestic abuse. The group also offers sex education lessons to very young children and volunteer members have been invited by elected officials to discuss children's rights, consent, and intimate parts of the body, according to information posted to their social media. In materials aimed at children, which include introduce LGBT themes, Lily Cerise et Sea promoted and endorsed ESAC, while Cotonou had worked in a leadership role. A judicial review is underway as the Nantes court regarding Hoffman's investigation. Among the horrific discoveries, the rape. I don't know why I did that. The rape. I don't know why I did that. I fell into the old term. I told you guys I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just saying the words. If I get deboosted, whatever. I mean, hopefully maybe Rumble's not doing that. Go follow me on Rumble. I'm done doing the fucking grape or those stupid terms you PDF. I just can't do it. It's too much. But all right, well, because I mean, I talk too much about this shit that it's like, whatever. If they deboost me, it is what it is. I mean, you shouldn't be watching me on YouTube anyways. Including infants, victims being targeted in the professional environment of a suspect, sex orgies involving children broadcast on the darknet, and suspicions of drugging victims. Jesus Christ. Total of 4 suspects, in addition to Cotonou, have been arrested to date. Among them is a man who has been convicted of homicide and rape of murders in Belgium. Who, I would like to know?
Yeah, for real.
A total of 4 suspects are going to be arrested today. Among them, huh? I mean, obviously, okay. I mean, there's no way that's there's no way that's like Dutroux or something. That's way too long ago.
Right.
But I don't know. Maybe. Okay. Although Belgium catches my eye, that's for sure. Law enforcement officials from several European countries were able to identify the suspects by analyzing child sexual abuse videos posted online. They are facing life imprisonment for the rape of minors, acts of torture and barbarism committed against minors, and human trafficking in an organized gang. According to La Parisienne, Cotonou is suspected of being the network's organizer and of providing victims to other sexual predators via his connections as a family assistant and early childhood professional. Cotonou allegedly offered up children and babies for men to rape from various regions of France. Jesus Christ, as well, even babies, it said, as well as abroad using encrypted communications applications. During the prearranged sessions, the men would film the rape of the victims, with some of the children being in such a state of lethargy that investigators believe they may have been drugged. Currently, a total of 4 victims under the age of 5 have been identified, though Hoffman expects there are more. Jesus Christ. We're almost the end, guys.
That's what they were doing in Country Walk, man. You know, drugging, using hypnotizing them as well, apparently.
Yeah. In September, Cotonou was arrested at Nantes airport upon return from a vacation in Tunisia, in charge of subjecting a severely developmentally disabled toddler he had fostered to horrific sexual and physical abuse. Upon police interrogation, he admitted to sexually and physically abusing the little girl and distributing videos through pedophile networks in France. Cotonou obtained approval from Child Welfare Services. So this guy worked for them to become a foster parent. Oh, never mind. I'm retarded. To become a foster parent. On December, but they said something about family stuff earlier, so I assume they were implying he worked for them. On December 1st, 2023, specifically requesting children under the age of 6. Wow. He was rapidly matched with a developmentally.
You know why? That's what Kathy O'Brien claimed. Oh. It was and also it came up in Kinkora.
Yeah.
It came up in Kinkora. They specifically want 5 years of age or younger. That's the specific age.
Yeah, if you're gonna fuck with someone's reality, the way they perceive the world, that's probably ideally the best time to do it. As fucked as that is.
For sure.
Whew. All right, we're almost there. Hoffman, in collaboration with Dutch authorities and the French National Police, became aware of graphic and violent child sexual abuse videos being exchanged through Telegram. Investigators were able to ascertain the whereabouts of the young victim by identifying a very unique medical bed seen in the footage. By tracing the sale and shipment history of the bed, police were led to Cotonou. The crimes of which he is accused are severe enough to receive the classification of acts of torture and barbarism, a distinction reserved for brutal sexual abuse. I do not wish to go into detail, but for an act of torture or barbarism to be qualified, it is necessary to demonstrate the exceptional violence exercised. Emphasized Renaud Godel, a public prosecutor of Nantes. If convicted only on charges related towards a disabled girl, Cotonou may face life imprisonment. During his police custody, the interested party admitted to being the author of the rape to the damage of this very young child, as well as several sexual assaults, says Godel. Oof. Yep, that's that. I'll say it does make me think of the Dutroux thing, because I have a feeling that this goes deeper than this guy. This guy being the head of it, I call fucking bullshit. But I don't know. Yeah.
You know what this reminds me of? It's why I brought up Kincora just now. It reminds me of Brian McDermott, the kid from the Kincora scandal that was basically ritualistically he was procured and ritualistically murdered, and it's one of the craziest stories of all time because it came from basically a statement was given to the Garda, which is this investigative authority in Ireland, and it came from a person who was a survivor of ritualistic abuse and states that in the early 1970s, just like fucking Regina Louf, man, her parents were Satanists, and this person would be used for satanic rituals, which is typically the way that those who come from intergenerational ritualistic abuse are kept alive. They use them to actually commit some of the murders on these children. Children are then procured, whether from prostitutes within the coven or they're abducted, and they are then used for deity worship, but also if someone requires something from the demon, and the demons will reward them. This is the concept, but only if paid in blood, and what they consider to be clean blood, which according to former detective John Wedger, who I've mentioned before, love to have a conversation with him. He just went on Nick Bryant's show.
If we can find, if anyone knows how to contact him, let him know. I'm open to it.
Honestly, I might
will
try
need
and
to do a
reach
little bit
out.
of homework. I will need. You know how to get a hold of him?
No, but
Okay.
but I'm
Yeah.
gonna attempt to because William had him on as well.
Yeah.
So I think I could at least
Probably hit him
ask
up,
him
yeah.
like, hey man, how'd you get a hold of him?
I'm gonna need
sure
to do a
there's
little bit
a-
of homework on him because I haven't gone down his. I've heard of him in passing and some of the stuff I've looked into, but I haven't looked into him a ton. But he would be a great guy to have on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, not only means the blood of a child, but before puberty, according to former Scotland Yard detective. After puberty, it has no power. Before puberty, it holds the power. Within these satanic ranks, they're called the Watchers and the Fixers. The Watchers are lower ranking. They will identify the children, notify the Fixer, who will then abduct the child and arrange it for a ritual. Much of this is money driven. You had members of
Watchers could also be called finders. Just saying.
That's what I'm saying, man. Especially, man, we had mentioned, remember the warehouse, right? In the Finders case, like they had private peer-to-peer, communication modules, which were legitimately set up all around the world, right? And they were procuring children for even the Chinese embassy. That was proven. And you had officials like they had paperwork, man, and it was clearly they were attempting to rush much of the evidence out of the properties at the time whenever they were under investigation. As soon as the guys got strung up in Tallahassee, I think is where it was. But as soon as they got arrested there in Florida, they instantly went into cover-up mode. Witnesses saw vans pulling up to the unmarked vans pulling up to the properties of the finders and just rushing out boxes of fucking evidence and paperwork. Holy shit.
I hit the wrong button. I was just trying to.
Okay.
I hit stop cam on accident.
Oh, word.
Yeah.
That tripped me out. But anyway.
I try to. So there's not like background noise going. So.
Okay.
Just for you guys. I'm not trying to cut you off, but I want to get through some of these stories, and then me and you are just gonna kind of what we're doing right now, just kind of going through some shit. We're gonna go through some notes. And this is something when we first started the show, I wanted to kind of do occasionally. Anyways, it'd be kind of fun for if we're going on things. We could almost like after tomorrow or on tinfoil hat, we could almost like plan our next big show. Kind of like whether we're gonna do the other theme. I just thought it'd be fun for like kind of working through notes. People, it was almost like research type environment. But before we have I have like one more story before we get into Gladio, and then we're gonna break off into getting into notes or the Gladio Dutroux stuff, and that's when we're going to start doing essentially connect Dutroux to Gladio, connect Finders to Gladio, connect all these different nodes that we want to talk about tomorrow. But for now, let's get into the Bibas story. We referenced this recently. This was the family that recently, and one of the kind of what I was talking about earlier with the idea of like, they kind of got set up for failure. I think this may have been part of it. The idea that like, because now Hamas is in a situation where like all they have left is dead hostages to return, And then this happened right at that time. This is one of the bodies that got returned. And then immediately, essentially, Israel goes, oh, fuck, like, you guys killed these people, even though this had been reported that supposedly that wasn't the case. So I'm going to give you, these are really, really, really short. This is literally just like a few paragraphs. So I'm just going to read this. So this is the initial. This is from 30 November 2023. This says, Hamas releases propaganda video regarding the Bibas family. Here's the family. I feel like I vaguely recall this, and I remember this being like a really fucked up story because it was the dad, I think, somehow got out and the family didn't, and he, supposedly he was upset that, Israel wasn't working to get his family back. It was really fucked up. But anyways, it says Hamas releases a propaganda video regarding the Bibas family. The video appears to show that Yarden Bibas, who's the father, is alive. And I might be mixing this up with somebody else because, he looks a lot like the video I recall from a long time ago. Some dad whose entire family had been killed. And they were hostages, I believe. And he was of the opinion that it was Israel's fault because they essentially he thought they got killed by like an airstrike or something. So he was upset with them, and he was also upset they wouldn't even try to get the bodies back or anything. So I want to say it was this guy, but it might not be. All 4 members of the Bibas family, Yarden, his wife Shiri, and their sons Ariel, 4, and baby Kafir, were abducted to Gaza on October 7th. But Yarden was abducted separately from the rest of his family. Hamas yesterday issued an unverified claim that Shiri, Ariel, and Kafir had been killed in an Israeli bombardment. The IDF said it was looking into the cruel claim, which is retarded. They were bombing indiscriminately. But all right, one more. Here's another one on this. Now this is more recent. This is from 4 days ago. So this then became, Hamas, the story became, I don't have an article to go into what the claim became, but it might go into it in here, but it became that they like beat it to death with their bare hands or some dumb shit. Now they're trying to say it's some other fucking group, which I don't really know what the angle of that would be other than to deflect from their initial retarded fucking claim. But so it says Al Mujahideen, the fringe terror group behind murder of Bibas children. Now, this says the extreme Salafi organization Al-Mujahideen, Lords of the Wilderness, pretty cool name actually, is the group that held Shiri Bibas and her 2 young children, Ariel and Kafir, after they were abducted into kibbutz near Oz during the Hamas-led October 7th. According to Israeli assessments, the group murdered them in captivity as early as November 2023. Al-Mujahideen was founded at the start of the second Intifada in 2001, breaking away from Fatah. It initially operated as a faction of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade before becoming an independent militant group. The organization follows a radical Salafi ideology which seeks to return to what it considers the fundamental roots of Islam, advocating extreme measures to achieve its goals. The group was initially led by Omar Abu Sharia, whom Israel attempted to eliminate in 2006. He succumbed to his injuries 6 months later. Over the years, Al-Mujahideen has carried out numerous attacks and has positioned itself as a violent extremist faction within Gaza. Unlike Hamas, which governs the enclave, Al-Mujahideen maintains a distinct entity often aligned with global jihadist movements. During the ongoing war in Gaza, the organization claimed to have suffered significant losses, including key members of its leadership. In April 2023, announced the deaths of several senior operatives, including the commander of its rocket unit in Gaza, a senior figure in the Dar al-Bala battalion, and a member of its elite unit in the same area. After the October 7th attack, Hamas transferred some hostages to smaller armed factions, including Mujahideen. Shiri Bibas and her children were among those handed over. According to Israeli intelligence, keep in mind that, according to Israeli intelligence, they were held in Khan Yunis before being murdered. The group falsely claimed that the Bibas family was killed in an Israeli airstrike, but IDF officials have confirmed that the children were brutally executed into captivity. Okay, guys, wrap it up. According to Israeli intelligence and IDF officials, and confirmed, so we're good. Al-Mujahideen's actions underscore the fragmentation of militant groups within Gaza and the brutality faced by hostages held by factions beyond Hamas itself. Israeli authorities continue to demand the return of Shiri Bibas' body, along with all remaining hostages. Okay, I guess I got this wrong. For some reason, I thought that the Bibas, maybe it was one of the other Bibases. For some reason, I thought one of them was the ones that were returned, and that's what started this. But either way, it became this whole thing about who killed these kids, this family, even though it initially was thought it was Israel. Now, that was Hamas's claim. Israel claims the opposite. They initially claimed it was Hamas, and now they're saying it's some sort of splinter group off of Hamas. I guess instead of deflecting from the original retarded claim, that would almost kind of solidify their claim that, like, look how look how unfixable Gaza is. There's so many fucking terrorist groups. They're all just murdering babies and shit. So yeah, I mean that's it.
And
Yeah.
like over 240 families or something. No, that was actual captives taken into Gaza. But their families essentially have been outraged like recently, and I found this interesting because Dan Cohen did an article on it called "Netanyahu and Kahanist Allies Wage Psy War to Sacrifice Captives for Conquest of Gaza." Uncaptured media obtains an exclusive recording exposing Netanyahu and his Kahanist collaborators' plot to sacrifice hostages and demoralize their families' efforts to pressure for an exchange deal. And it's very brief. I mean, it's a longer article, but this part's very brief. On October 15th, the Israeli Prime Minister's office communicated to the Hostage and Missing Families Forum, the main organization that represents almost all of the families of the captives in Gaza, informing them that they would meet with Benjamin Netanyahu at the Home Front Command in the central city of Ramallah. Given just 2 hours' notice and told one representative each from 5 families would be allowed in. They quickly organized themselves and raced off, believing Netanyahu was sincere in his desire to bring the captives home. It had been 8 days since the surprise Hamas attack that led to the deaths of some 1,123 Israelis and 240 others taken captive into Gaza. The families had yet to meet with Netanyahu and had grown desperate as the prime minister and war cabinet kept them in the dark about plans to secure their safe return, as calls for vengeance and the total destruction of Gaza dominated Israel's national discourse. Netanyahu had appointed Reserve Brigadier General Gal Hirsch, a scandal-ridden Likud functionary, described by a family member of a captive as a B-movie general, to head a task force. Lacking will or resources, he had accomplished nothing. The day before the meeting, National Security Council Chief Zachi Hanegbi publicly rejected negotiations to secure the captives, prompting outrage from the families and an impromptu vigil and protest outside the Defense Ministry in Tel Aviv. At the meeting, seated around a table with Netanyahu, Chief of Staff Zahi Braverman, media advisor Topaz Luke, and Hirsch, the family members recounted one by one horror stories of losing communication with their loved ones and learning that they had been dragged into Gaza. Less than 20 minutes into the meeting, according to family members of captives who were there, an aide to Netanyahu entered the room and announced that another group of families of captives had arrived. Several religious Zionists, identifiable by their distinctive style of dress, then entered the room, none of whom were familiar to the families already inside. As those families would soon find out, Netanyahu, the group of religious Zionist latecomers, and a broader political network of extreme right-wing Kahanists had fired the opening shot of a total psychological, political, and media war against the families of the captives, seeking to demoralize and confuse them and drown out their calls for negotiations with Hamas and the national cacophony of calls for vengeance. That's how it starts, but it's pretty damn good, honestly. I read it like yesterday, and it just goes on to elaborate even more about how this was all a manufactured crisis to manufacture consent of all things. What a concept. So anyway.
Yeah. All right. This is we're on to the last story, and then we're gonna kind of break off into a little research exercise, I guess. It says so we're back into the Gladio one. This was a long one, so we kind of broke it in half yesterday. So we're kind of in the middle, so it may not make as much sense jumping off from the jump, but let's just go ahead and jump into it. Fuck it. It says, knowing this, it seems so on the nose that Nihul describes being in cohort with the likes of Vanden Boynants and other Christian Democrats politicians. His wife, Annie Booty, was a prominent lawyer in their circles. Most of the higher names in CPIC/PSC were Opus Dei too, which I find that interesting considering we've talked about Annie Booty and how she ties into that weird satanic, or I mean even uses Christian language. So I don't really know what to make of it, what it is philosophically speaking, but like something weird, and it's a bizarre that's the Opus Dei connections. So it's like I don't know. Paul Vanden Boynants was also named in the Pinon file. Reports of orgies and parties were present amongst Belgium's elites, like former King Albert II. Actually, I think I started in the wrong place, but no. All right, so let's start back here. My bad, I fucked up. Now, Boohoosh wasn't the end of the Gladio-related accusations by X1. She would go on to name Paul van den Boynens himself as being one of her recurrent abusers and one of the most violent, along with his protege, the infamous Black Baron Benoit de Bonvoisin. Yeah. Now, who is Behush again? I'm trying to remember who Behush is so we can...
Dude. Oh, well, Madani Behush, he was basically... if you remember, he apparently...
It's a she, by the way. Unless they fucking...
Well, there were 5 important names. Paul van den Boynens, Baron Benoit de Bonvoisin.
Behush.
Madani Behush.
Oh, no, I'm retarded. No, I'm retarded. It wasn't the end of the Gladio related accusations by X1. I misread that. So she. So that's referring to. Okay, so Behush is is an investigator, right? Yep. So okay, cool. So yeah, there we go. All right, cool. We're caught up now. So the investigator X1 claimed
he was one of the instructors hired by Bonvoisin to turn the Front de la Jeunesse into an effective fighting force. It was Madani Behush, right? Member of the Belgian Gendarmerie, who worked as a part of the CIA-trained National Bureau of Drugs, an organization created under the direction...
Behush was the asshole with the glasses that were like, well, that's not the greatest, but he is a fucking scuzzy cunt, and he's like super grimy, so it's probably... Okay. Like he's an ex-gendarme turned gangster. That's what we talked about last time. All right, we're all caught up. It's this fuck right here, this douche nozzle. He shows... She said... She claims she thinks she got raped by him, although I don't think she named his name, although it seems heavily implied it's him. She also she was going on to name Paul van den Boynens. So this is Regina Loof, X1. X1 named Boynens, which is what, the prime minister, right? There's the guy who's a prime minister at one point. Yep. I'm not sure if he's a prime minister at this time, but he was at one point. So either way, you're still talking about whether it's a president or former president. It's still fucking wild.
He was the former prime minister at that time, I believe. Member of Opus Dei as well as so was David Bonvoisin. Or Benoit de Bonvoisin was the Black Baron. He was another member of Opus Dei as well, who helped fundraise for Van den Boynens. So anyway.
Okay. So knowing this, it seems on the nose that Nihul describes being cohort with the likes of Van den Boynens and other Christian Democrat politicians. His wife, we already said that. His wife Annie Booty was a lawyer in the circles. Most of the higher names in CPIC were Opus Dei. Paul Van den Boynens was named in the Pinon file. So Boynens was not only named by, was it X1, I believe? No, what did we say earlier? Who named who named him? Was it X1 who named Boynens? I think it was.
I'm almost positive.
And it was also it was Lee Baer we talked about yesterday. Lee Baer, the guy that posted the previous WNP guy, he also claimed he saw VDB with King Albert. Is where when he said it was his claim. So. We got X1, we got Lee Baer, and then we're also claims that he was supposedly in the Pinon files. So, which I believe the Lee Baer claim is probably more associated with the Pinon file. So, anyways, now getting back to Bonvoisin. To put it simply, the man is repugnant, a vile conservative aristocrat, owner of multiple castles and estates throughout Belgium. Which I believe, if I recall correctly, he might be the guy where the castle component comes in that a lot of people like to focus on. Yeah, that's where they
were having the pink ballets,
Yeah. And that was at his place or one of his multiple castles? Because it would check out. Okay. So he was
rigged with audiovisual blackmail. They had tripods set up and shit for the bedrooms. Insane.
Dude, is that the guy? Is that him? Bonvoisin?
Hold on, let me pull it. Oh, dude, yeah. You got to look at the pictures of these fucking guys, man. I'm telling you, like I said yesterday, it's the Jimmy Savile effect, bro.
Yeah, you're like looking, you're like, oh yeah, no shit.
Of course he's a pedophile. Are you fucking kidding me?
Oh, he's running a fucking awful satanic pedophile ring at the highest levels of the government. Oh, I could have guessed that.
Exactly. Just look at him.
Physiognomy, dog. X1 claims that VDB and Bonvoisin were present when she gave birth for the first time, torturing her. I feel like I'm going too far even mentioning this, but to showcase how far the abuse actually went.
Man.
Yeah, that was fucked up.
Dude.
Yeah.
You hear the shit about
beat her,
the
raped her.
Torture
they took
the
kid. No, they took the kid like a month later, I think was the claim. So, but still.
While she's having birth, she was being raped.
Mm-hmm.
They had a dog, dude. Yeah. An animal.
Yeah.
Like
they were
bestiality, brother.
I believe this was in this case they were claiming they were literally putting children in like cages with dogs and shit and like letting them get raped. It was insane.
It's one of the most fucked up things I've ever read in my life, man.
Yeah. Going even further in cruelty, Bonvoisin was accused by X1 of being a central character in what can only be called child hunts. Abused children were brought to a property by their pimps and then let out in a forest to then be killed, tortured, or raped to the participants' liking. Now here's I'm assuming, I think this is the castle. What the La Chateau is the this thing. I believe this is the castle a lot of people focus on, which I believe Jules did, or Grey Pill did an episode on this once. So go check that out. He went into kind of the details of the castle and the kind of weirdness in there, and there's a lot to that. It's a creepy. I mean, you look at the photos inside of it, it's just creepy. When the ex-investigators are suddenly investigated themselves by their superiors for allegedly helping X1 during her interviews by planting names and places, the Baron swoops in and tries to smear the name of the main investigator, Patrick de Bates. There's a lot of noise. So I guess the Baron comes in, Bonvoisin, tries to talk shit about the investigator. This is right after de Bonvoisin somehow learned that X1 and other X-witnesses had named him as an abuser when most of the questioning was kept behind closed doors. His attempts will not lead to anything. What were you going to say?
You had mentioned the hunts. They called it the chase. That's what they called it, apparently. And it was a tribute to the biblical Moloch, or child sacrifice, presented in some forms, of course, as the owl. But yeah, that's what they called it, the hunt. And they were captured and would be tortured, sodomized, and some of the children even died there, because this was in I think they took them to Rainbow Wood, located in Bath in the UK. And once there, saints of these cult groups would take part in the ritualized tribute they called the chase, where he would be stripped naked and they would be chased by men and dogs. So yeah. That's crazy, man.
All right. André Moyen, fervent anti-communist Belgian intelligence officer and a founding member of SDRA, aka Belgian Gladio, will also try to accuse Debates of falsifying the X1 reports. And it's after Moyen speaks up that the superiors of Debates start investigating him. So this fuck. To be clear, the book on which I'm basing most of this thread, Les Dossiers X, spends a large amount of its pages debunking the debunking of X1's claims and the media frenzy that soon followed, where Regina was called crazy and discredited, and it does so successfully, in my opinion, as most of the accusations toward the investigators manipulating the investigation are either unfounded or based on errors. This is when X1's name, Regina Louf, was revealed to the public when she had intended on staying anonymous from the start in the investigation. There were talk shows held on Belgian TV channels with people ridiculing her and anyone who dared believe her stories. I want to also mention other ex-witnesses and their claims, as well as the various Gladio-related abusers they recall meeting. Let's start off with X2, a police officer who had worked on the actual Dutroux affair herself.
Oh my God.
Yeah, in a meeting with other officers in 96, she hears of X1 and the abuse she suffered, and she looked as if she was shriveling, curling herself up. She decided to speak up about what she had been through. X2 says she was most of the time only watching others when she was brought by her pimp to these parties. She described a few hotels and villas where she was brought to the investigators, with one villa in Knock matching a place also described by X1. It's important to keep in mind that obviously none of the X-witnesses knew anything about what the others had told the investigators. Everything related to the X investigation was for the investigators' eyes only, with reports going out to their superiors once in a while. X2 doesn't recall seeing anything out of the extraordinary besides orgies between the country's elite, as she was conditioned to believe this was normal by her pimp. She does recall seeing children at many of the events she was brought to, as well as Michelle Nihul. So I guess she's saying she didn't actually see any things, kind of like almost like our Secret Service person we were talking about earlier kind of deal. Like, you didn't see anything, but she, at least like overtly, but there were children that were present there. She just didn't see anything happen. So she doesn't, this is what she seems like she's saying. X2 was in this environment for 4 years only, from 1984 to 1988, and she hasn't seen everything for herself, but also heard stories told to her by other children at these parties. She had a friend named Eva who disappeared one day after she was brought to the S&M chamber. One of the most chilling accounts of X2's testimonies are describing what she could only say was a child hunt. At one of these parties that took place in a castle in the Ardennes woods, she heard agonizing children. It was terrible, indescribable. X2 stopped working with the... So, go ahead. You going to say something?
Oh, man. These hunts, according to X2, were on children organized in the woods of Chateau de Chimay. So, yeah, it was together with the prince and princess of Chimay. And apparently X2 mentioned having been at a meeting organized by her pimp, at which Demerode and the Ursel, who let me find their original, Herve de Ursel, yeah, and Bernard Demerode, Um, and so, and Debon Voice and families were all present there. And that is when, together with the Prince and Princess of Chimay, according to X2, that's where the hunts on the children were organized in the woods of Chateau de Chimay. So that's very interesting as well, especially considering that they're like nobility, and a part of the elite establishment, obviously.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. X2 stopped working with investigators when rumors were being told what to say got out. She said she knew X1's investigation was also never going to end well. Here's a quote that sums up her feelings. She knows the police and judiciary world. She speaks on how the investigation into the Brabant killers are thoroughly sabotaged. And here it started again. The only question I still have about it is how I could have been so naive. I don't care. It was so predictable. X3 is older than the other X-witnesses. This is no longer a quote, by the way. And the events she recalled take place from 1950 to 1962. She says she was abused as a child and brought to parties held by elites where children were tortured and killed in a ceremonial, almost ritualistic way. Her testimony isn't as backed as the other ex-witnesses as they aren't from the same era except for hers. Nevertheless, Van den Boynants, around his 40s in that time period, is also described as an abuser by X3, and she also describes child hunts. So we have two people describing child hunts. Go ahead, you were going to say something.
Oh man, I was just rereading some of the abuse that took place. It's disturbing as hell, man.
Fucking awful, yeah. Whew. All right, there could be speculation on how her testimony is the one who brought the whole investigation down. Some of it mentions people like King, then Prince Albert II of Belgium, who cannot be prosecuted according to Belgian law, which is kind of wild. As her testimony was part of the same file as the other X-witnesses, the actual X-files referred to as 109/96. If any part of the other in testimonies helped say resolve an unsolved murder, this would put the investigators into a constitutional dead end. Okay, they're saying it was since the King's involved. So the investigation had to be trashed and discredited by all means possible. This is just a theory mentioned by a former investigator in the Les Dossiers X book. The theory being that, it had to get, spiked because of the King. I mean, let's be real. I think even without the King, it would have got spiked. To end things on the X-witnesses, let's talk about X4. As a young girl, she went through multiple Christian cults and sects. She says she was loaned to a man by her mom. I do want to say it's interesting they said Christian cults because we've talked about Opus Dei a lot. And then there's also that weird thing. I thought it was bizarre that, why is Annie Booty kind of in these circles when it's clearly implied? Like, even the party, SEPIC, what C stands for Christian, I believe. This is a Christian party.
The Jesuit connection potentially there, right?
Yeah.
Especially since that combines with all the other networks that are so similar in the finders as well, right? There's the Jesuit connection to the Mexican compound.
And as I've mentioned multiple times, Abraxas is also called the Celestian or Celestial Church, I think, or something. Dude, so it's it's the inverted of Christ. Yeah. So it's
the duality. It's the Jehovah and it's the worshiping of both. It's so strange, but it was what they implemented within the framework of their ideology in The Ultimate Evil as well with David Berkowitz. So it's the process implication there is interesting, you know.
She says she was loaned to a man by her mom, and this man made snuff movies. She names Van den Boynant as someone who was interested in these tapes. She describes the same hotel in Knock as X1, even points out pictures of X1's childhood friends who also suffered abuse. She says she also went to parties and points out high-profile people named the Pinon file mentioned earlier. So I guess that'd be corroboration, somewhat, sort of, not really.
When X1 gave birth, X1 gave birth and was raped and sodomized, her daughter disappeared 6 weeks later.
Yeah,
I mean, I wonder how
earlier. It was like a month ago. They raped her during the birth, and then like a month or so later, they took the kid. Right? Yep. Yeah, what are they doing with these kids? Yeah. You can do awful. Obviously everything's awful, but they could murder them for rituals. They can raise them to be the next, stock to work with.
100%. And they all were claiming X1, X2, X3, and X4. All were claiming that these murders of these children were often captured on snuff films, on video, which were subsequently shown at a number of abuse parties.
Yep.
So.
One interesting detail is that X4 mentions Opus Dei members as some of her most sadistic clients. A naked picture of her as a child was found in pedophile Jean Roll Raymaker's private collection. So that definitely corroborates her claims about being The goal of this thread was to map out in a clear way, hopefully, the accusations of the ex-witnesses against the people related to Gladio in some way and showcase how this child abuse network could have been part of the operation, but how and in which way. To me, the most obvious reason is blackmail. The network was ran with the help of actual pedophiles and pimps, but with the actual goal of having tapes of intelligence officers, police officers, politicians, aristocrats, industrials having sex with children. The lines between pedophilia, bourgeoisie, or bourgeois orgies and blackmail are blurred, but that's how you run a successful operation. Everyone thinks what they're doing is fine. Everyone here does it until one day there's a mention of a tape and they're coerced. To me, this is
man.
Yeah, right.
You know
right?
that in 2004, that in regard to these snuff films, an English language magazine reports on EU affairs located in Brussels called The Sprout, published a report claiming that 8-year-old Julie Lujan and Melissa Russo, wasn't that her name?
Yeah, I think that was Julie and Melissa. I think were the first two. Well, not the first two. I mean, they were the first that like kind of kicked off the public like what the fuck's going on type deal. Like that's the way it became like big publicly was it became like a nationwide thing was the Julie and Melissa. Yeah.
Well, according to this '04 report from the Sprout, this Brussels publication, Julie and Melissa didn't actually die of starvation, but had been killed in a snuff film, and that a number of prominent people had been present at this murder. Two of the most prominent names in the X dossiers are Paul Van den Benens and Baron Benoit de Bonvoisin. Van den Benens was accused by X1, X3, and X4 of being a violent child abuser and or person involved in hunts on children. So yeah, it's just crazy to me that it goes to show that it very clearly seems as if, you know, a lot of this child procurement was essentially for the production of snuff films. So not surprised, man, that we're having so many different witnesses make these claims. But yeah, Van den Benen's name also appeared in the Pinion file.
Pinon is what I've been saying.
Okay. The 1980s in Modsar's TV testimony in February 1990, in which his name came up alongside a DEA-trained gendarme general with whom he once ran a massive drug importing operation with. Both the Pinon and Modsar cases were about a prostitution network in which minors were used to blackmail high-ranking officials. X1 and X2 mentioned de Bonvoisin as one of the most sadistic abusers in the network. One of his sisters married Count Herve de Ursel, who has been accused by X1 of involvement in the snuff and ritual abuse network. His other sister is married to Bernard Demerode, an intelligence-connected family which has been accused of child abuse and Satanism by X4 and Natalie W. So yeah, that's where you have them mentioning that they were alongside, they were at a meeting, X2, organized by her pimp, alongside the Demerode, de Ursel, and de Bonvoisin families, where they then held this ritualistic hunt for these children in the woods of Chateau de Chimay. Holy shit, man. You know, is this not one of the craziest, most extraordinary stories you've ever come across in your life?
Oh yeah, it's fucking nuts. I've been like reeling on this, and we're about to fucking dump. I mean, this isn't obviously all we're talking about tomorrow, but this is gonna play a big part in it. To me, this is showcased in Belgium through the Pinon file, which could have been the possible reason behind one of the Brabant killers' hit on Jacques Forez and Elise de Witt. I'll go on a bit about it as it perfectly showcases how things worked in Gladio, Belgium. Here's the sum up of the situation. 7th Brabant killers attack, 1983, which, you know, you're going to kind of get the idea of what these Brabant killings are in a second. A couple is gunned down at a gas station near a Collier supermarket. The killers take off with coffee bags and chocolates. Turns out the killed couple were CPIC members. Now, that's basically what the Brabant killings were. They were these random attacks on these, like, supermarkets. That's all they were. And it was literally like basically Gladio. Now that we've covered before,
an environment of chaos, basically.
Yeah, it created environments of chaos, and the claim is too that I guess most, if not all, of these people were like CPIC members or individuals with blackmail and stuff. So if anything, it was like kind of which if you think about it, that's kind of smart. Like if you were to like have a group of people that you need to eliminate, and you already want some sort of false flag, something or other, supermarkets would be a place that's like everyone has to go to the supermarket. So it's like. You can kill 10 people, and they're like, oh, my God, people at supermarkets, they're going to think it's just random people getting killed at supermarkets.
Exactly.
And it's like, it's an easy tie that like everyone does.
Targeted
So it's like,
assassinations.
yeah,
though.
if you're
And then
gonna do
take out
targeted
a few-
assassinations and make it seem like
Yeah.
you're just going after supermarkets, when it's like
Yeah.
no, it's just,
Just
I'm going
commit a
after
mass
something that
shooting.
everybody goes to.
And that's what they were doing. Just
Mm-hmm.
commit a mass shooting. You kill who you want and who you're targeting, but also kill a few others. And that way
Yeah.
it's plausible deniability. No one can say who you were directly targeting.
Yeah, and I never even thought about the
interesting.
idea that like everyone goes to supermarkets, so this is kind of like a perfect cover for assassination. So it's like,
Yeah.
because it's like eventually eventually they gotta go to the supermarket, they gotta eat, especially in the
100%,
80s.
man.
Like there weren't delivery companies, like you had to go
That's
to
so
you
fucking
had to go
crazy.
grocery shopping. Like everyone had to go grocery shopping. So
Mm-hmm.
all right. They were about to make millions by selling a tape where a politician accused in the Pinon file and by some of the ex-witnesses, Charlie DePaul is seen with minors. Not focusing on the Brabant killers aspect here. This perfectly illustrates what I was saying about blackmail. I think there were also factions at play in the larger scheme of things, so that maybe this was a show of force by the people in charge of the blackmail. Gladio, to put it bluntly, that they're in control of this and that not anybody can go ahead and try to blackmail like they do. As gruesome as this threat is, I hope this helps people understand why you can say that the Dutroux affair was part of a global Gladio operation going on at that time in Belgium. As always, open to suggestions. But yeah, that's basically all of it. He gives like sources and stuff. So I thought that was an interesting thread. There's more that maybe we'll cover later in the show. Somnambulism Schism saying, y'all are awesome. Oche says, have we got to Adrenochrome yet? Go check out Tommy over on Paranoid American. He's done a lot of great work on that. It hasn't really ever come up like anything that we've looked into, really. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's in there, but
The
doesn't really come
blood
up.
harvesting for sure has come up, but I will say it did come up in the Fort Bragg case. I found interesting. They had what's it called? Like plungers, but medical plunger. What the hell they called? Syringes. They had filled syringes of blood. So they were harvesting the blood during the fertility death ritual of Colette McDonald, who was Jeffrey McDonald's wife, obviously at the time, who was pregnant. And she was a priority target. Basically, what they were going to rough up Jeffrey McDonald, but also if apparently if for any reason he was resisting, the initial priority target became the pregnant woman, and it was the pregnant woman from the beginning. And that was all within the framework of like an occult initiation. It was like a layered approach to like targeting Jeffrey McDonald and his family. Very interesting, man. But anyway,
we have
it's not
hip-hop
only
heads.
then.
Sorry,
What's up?
you go ahead. Yours is more important. I was just
Oh no,
bringing
you're
up a
good. I was just can like it is definitely a priority as far as I'm concerned, the harvesting of young blood. And that's what I was kind of getting at in regard to Brian McDermott and the Kincora connection, because that was explicitly desired.
I did find it particularly interesting when you were talking. And this is something we've talked about before, like why or how or what like how this what's going on at these levels of these weird cults. And you said something that you're like, well, the demons will grant you favor or power or whatever. And it's like, well, that sounds like, esoteric and like, ooh, like woo woo, but it's like, it's kind of true. The demons are going to give you power or they'll give you favor, whatever. What are those demons? We kind of just spent, the past 20 minutes talking about, demons, didn't we?
Right.
That's so, I mean, like whether you want to believe there's an actual, religious entity that is actually associated with that, or if it literally is just, it's almost like a secular religion if you think about it, but it's like a secular religion that you can also apply religiosity to if you want to. Because it is like this whole concept when we get into this high levels of this weird, whatever religious SRA type stuff, it's almost like it is like a religion of power. Because I know a lot of people go like, a lot of people frequently believe like, you go like, oh, you gotta believe in God to believe this stuff. I'm like, I don't think you really do. Like I get it. Like just because there are people who worship Satan in the world doesn't mean there is a God. I'm not trying to have that argument, but my point being is like and I think there are probably a lot, if not even maybe even most of these people that probably are secular individuals that just use it as like a way to, as a methodology towards power.
Right.
So that's the way I look at it. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're all just super religious and they're really caught up. I mean, I think there are probably true believers in whatever the fuck is going on in these things. And some of them probably are at the tippy top. So there are probably some true believers at the tippy top. But I just feel like a lot of those probably know, like, oh, this is the way you get power, and it's almost like a secular religion of power. I did want to bring it just because I thought it was funny, and I didn't mean to cut you off what I said when I brought it up, because this is stupid. He just said Jose looks different than I thought he would in a bad way. Nah, JK. From Hip-Hop
What
Head.
the fuck?
I do want to say my hair is all fucked up today. I'm normally way cuter. So, come back another time. Check me out. I'll have my hair all nice for you. But let's get into some notes. I told you this is a thing. I've kicked around the idea of doing this before, but as you guys can see, if you're watching, which I guess if you're listening, you'll probably get the same idea. But I figured this would be kind of cool to, I don't know, be a good research tool to kind of go through, organize our thoughts. I mean, hell, we were just talking about Dutroux affair, so we're kind of establishing connections to Gladio. So I figure, I mean, hell, we can just go through now. We can list off a few. What do you think are another couple we should add to this? Yeah, I know we mentioned just before the show, we talked about the Finder's Cult. So we got that.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. I think, honestly, Colonia Dignidad would be decent because that's Paul Schaefer was a straight up pedophile and a Nazi SS member, right? And it perfectly ties in the Ratline connection, so we could like at least briefly mention that this is a perfect example of how you had like legitimately I forget the name of that SS Nazi doctor that's like super one of the most infamous of all time. For some reason that's escaping me right now, but you have all of these different examples of like these official Nazis who were basically treating this as like some sort of hidden clandestine escape, right, where they would go and spend time at this really Operation Gladio, I think, was heavily involved in the OTS, but still. So the Order of the Solar Temple, I think, is a great one as well that we could mention too, because you have like Julian Arrigas is the direct connection to Gladio there, I think, in the OTS.
I'm sorry, say that again. Colonia Dignidad. Which one's this?
This one's the Order of the Solar Temple.
Oh, so we're talking Order of the Solar Temple too. So I got to add that to the list. Yeah, I was just thinking too. We should probably add themes too, because we are kind of connecting these things to do Gladio, but also the part of the thing is kind of like
Colonia Dignidad,
like weirdness, like you just said, like Nazi stuff, so we can tie it into Nazi stuff, tie it into
like
child trafficking,
a German safe haven, a Nazi safe haven in the right based on Operation Condor, is essentially what happened. Is it was set up down there in Chile, and that was all during when remember they were using the Mullen and Company, right? I think it was George Mullen. Was that his first name? I can't remember.
Which one this is again? I'm sorry. What were we talking about here again? I'm trying to make these notes as we go. What was
no.
Back up? We were talking because we got Dutroux Fair Finders called Colonia Dignidad. I'm sorry. I got stacked up with the Nazi stuff.
Sorry. Yeah, I got all schizo. So basically.
I'm organizing your thoughts mostly. So you went from Colonia Dignidad, you said something else, and I was like, okay, and then I completely blanked it after you said it. See the chat, but I don't know, maybe the chat would fill it in, but nope. Do you not remember what you were literally just going on? I'm just trying to put which one of these.
Basically, I had mentioned just the Nazi safe haven in Chile, set up by Operation Condor. Is that what you're thinking about?
But this ties into Colonia Dignidad, right?
Yeah. But
okay, you mentioned another thing after that. Okay.
The only reason that I was like following it up with this statement was because it's Chile, so they had just kind of overthrown Allende, right? And that's legitimately, if you remember, Doug Caddy claims that it was. What was it? Hold on, let me find it because I have it here in my notes somewhere. But it's kind of hilarious because Doug Caddy, dude. This is in my Watergate notes. So he claims, and by the way, he was of course the initial defense attorney for the first seven burglars for the Watergate break-in.
Is that proper spelling? This ties into Colonia Dignidad, right?
Yeah, it does because Caddy claims he received this puzzling phone call while he's working at the Mullen and Company. And it was Robert Mullen who gave him a call, his boss and owner of the lucrative CIA cover contract. And he just so happened to be in Chile when he gives Doug Caddy this call. And you remember Doug Caddy, personal friends with Howard Hunt, who was also being employed at this Mullen and Company during the Watergate scandal. But still, he gets this call from Robert Mullen, and Doug Caddy asks him, well, what are you doing in Chile? And Mullen responds by saying, we're here to overthrow Allende. So I just think it's like so ridiculous because then after this, you have the fact, and I brought this up I think once to you before, but it was basically that Lawrence Houston, right? He reaches out to Doug Caddy with Howard Hunt at a dinner, and he basically was Lawrence Houston was the general counsel to the CIA. And so they're having drinks on the Maryland side of the Potomac River at a restaurant. And he did not disclose to Doug Caddy what this meeting was going to be about. But when he got there, he was offered a job with the CIA. And this is when Caddy claims that this offer came as a surprise. And Lawrence Houston, the general counsel, said that upon accepting this position, we would want you to go to Nicaragua and construct and open a luxurious hotel there. And we would lure the Sandinista leaders to the hotel and videotape them and entrap them in a typical CIA operation. So again, you're dealing with, just like in Kincora, the sexual blackmail component of staging these, really like controlled property assets. I think they either just flat out create, a luxurious hotel for the purpose of legitimately running a clandestine blackmail operation. Like that alone is something worthwhile to acknowledge. You know what I'm saying, as far as being involved. But still, the only reason I brought it up was because clearly the CIA had a very strong footprint in Chile at the time that the Colonia Dignidad was formed, and this Nazi safe haven was being exploited and really leveraged to essentially they used it as a death camp. I mean, they were torturing and assassinating dissidents in Chile.
This was Operation Condor, right?
Yeah, this was Operation Condor, which to me is just exactly Gladio. It's a version of Gladio. It's just like they had different areas of the world, and they would kind of name the operation based on that. But in reality, it very much seems as if they coexisted and were overlapping in more ways than one.
Well, I think I may actually want to put this more towards the top to denote, like, this would be kind of something we covered earlier, because now that I'm thinking about it, this would be the appropriate time, like kind of early on, to also talk about things like Operation Phoenix.
Exactly.
Another one. So that kind of ties into that. That's the same thing.
Right. And that, what else that ties into? Fucking Colston Westbrook from the Patty Hearst connection.
Patty Hearst,
which
slash
bring in any number of things. SLA, the Symbionese Liberation Army. Dude, one of the craziest.
So what was that? Westbrook? I forget his full name.
Colston Westbrook.
Colston Westbrook. There we go.
That would be a fun one.
Yeah, Colston.
Because MK Ultra's all up in that as well.
Yeah,
by the way,
MK. So. Okay, yeah, MK Ultra. Yeah, that's all right. Also, another theme to add to these. So, boom. There we go. MK Ultra, child trafficking, Nazi stuff. Because we get the Nazi connections via that. This is a blackmail. So we got blackmail as well. Let's throw that at the top. Boom. So there we go.
And I know with the Order of the Solar Temple.
Oh, that's what you were talking about earlier. That I was like, what did you say? And I couldn't remember what it was. All right, Order of Solar Temple. Order of Solar Temple. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
I think that it's really interesting because clearly Alan Dulles was not the only OSS official involved in establishing the Stay Behind networks, right? He was aided by one James Jesus Angleton, which is often, he comes up very often in the context of these investigative rights.
Mike Ben's granddad worked for.
Yeah, he's a very strange spook, man. And Angleton's father, Hugh, he also served in the OSS. And before the war, Hugh had been the president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Italy and the owner of the Milan branch of the National Cash Register Company. The elder Angleton, who was outspokenly pro-Hitler and pro-Mussolini, had developed extensive contacts throughout Italy that were of great use to his son, James Jesus Angleton. One such contact was Prince Junio Valerio Borghese, and a member of the Catholic black nobility, the Italian aristocrats who had remained loyal to the Holy See after the rise of Garibaldi in the 19th century. So Borghese or Borghese, no, it's Borghese. Oh my God, I'm retarded. Borghese was the leader of the Cima Flottiglia, MAS, 10th Light Flotilla, also known as X-MAS, an Italian naval commando unit. So This gets interesting because on May 15th, 1945, when Borghese was arrested and charged with war crimes, Angleton managed to secure his release into U.S. Army custody. The Black Prince was dressed in an American uniform and transported from Milan to Rome. Angleton needed Borghese and the 10,267 fascists who fought under his command to help establish the stay-behind units that would ward off any Soviet aggression, allegedly. For a while, Angleton and other OSS officials, including Donovan, toyed with the idea of making Borghese the new king of Italy. But soon they came to their senses and realized that the ex-mass commander would be of greater use as the leader of a shadow government with a secret army that could manipulate Italian affairs throughout the coming decades. It's so crazy how they set up this this guerrilla fighting force in many ways, right? And using propaganda tactics but a special training camp for these members of the stay behind units was set up in Sardinia.
And which one's this
Italy's
tied?
what's coast?
What's this tied into again? What the
Sardinia
OTS,
the Order of the Solar Temple.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this is say that again.
So
what was the name of this place?
This is a special training camp for the members of the stay behind units, which was set up in Sardinia off Italy's western coast. So the camp was soon swarming with new gladiators from Germany, France, and Austria. By 1946, when the OSS morphed into the CIA, the Central Intelligence Group.
This ties into older Solar Temporal. Am I missing?
Dude.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of like I'm staging it really quickly.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I'm just.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, we obviously you're going to explain a little bit here, but I'm just trying to get it as you go. All right, but keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So basically, by 1946, it was a precursor Central Intelligence Group that apparently hundreds of Gladio units were in place throughout Western Europe, based on the utilization of this Central Intelligence Group, and so the Gladio connection to the Order of the Solar Temple comes in the form of, first of all, it directly involves the tragic mass killings committed in Norway by Anders Behring Breivik in 2011, which I found very interesting because Breivik is a Norwegian far-right neo-Nazi extremist, now considered a terrorist, who he is known primarily for committing the 2011 Norway attacks on July 22nd of that year, in which he killed 8 people by detonating a van bomb at Regjuring. I'm not going to pronounce this, but it was in Oslo, and then killed 69 participants of a Workers' Youth League AUF summer camp in a mass shooting on the island of Utoya. He was responsible for killing a total of 77 people, many of them teenagers, in the bomb attack and mass shooting gun rampage. And apparently the CIA's infamous stay-behind networks, originally established by the CIA, of course, to commit acts of sabotage against an expected Soviet invasion of Western Europe. Let's see.
What Jonestown? Do you have Jonestown Gladio connections?
Oh yeah,
that you can recall?
Jonestown, for sure,
Okay.
for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
But let's see. The terror visited by the Gladio fear-stoking paramilitaries was especially felt in the Belgian province of Brabant, where the Brabant gang acted from 1982 and 1985.
Brabant killings.
Brabant killings, the height of Europe's anti-nuclear and anti-U.S. military campaign.
Ooh.
28 people were killed by the Brabant gang, with scores of others injured. Particularly targeted were Dale Hayes Supermarkets, the chain that owns Food Lion in the United States. Oddly, money stolen from victims was sometimes found dumped by the gang members. 3 of the killings stemmed from the robbery of an arms dealer. There were several reports that the Brabant gang was run by elements of the Belgian Gendarmerie SDRA 6, a secret branch of Belgian security and the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, acting on behalf of the CIA. The Brabant gang was also linked to the activities of a neo-Nazi organization in Belgium called the Westland New Post, whose terrorist actions were blamed by authorities on the communist combatant cells, also believed to be a construct of the Belgian and American security services. Among the victims of the Brabant gang were Belgian real estate tycoon Jacques Forez and his secretary Elise de Witt, killed by the gangsters in 1983. Their deaths, as well as others, were linked to the evidence they possessed of secret parties called Pink Ballets, at which Belgium's elite included members of the royal family, NATO officers, and politicians, participated in orgies with underage children. There's another link between the Belgian Gladio operation in the 1980s and the activities of Anders Behring Breivik in Norway. A number of Belgian neo-Nazi paramilitary members.
This to back up, this guy is tied into this is a member of the Order of the Solar Temple. Is that what you're saying here?
A number of Belgian neo-Nazi paramilitary members were connected to the Order of the Solar Temple, a secret society founded in the 1960s by French Nazis.
Who's this guy again?
This is Anders Behring Breivik. Behring is like Behring, and then his last name is Breivik in Norway. Breivik and his closest associates were also affiliated with the anti-Islamic Knights Templar groups, the Neo-Templar Renaissance. Here we fucking go, man. Between 94 and 97, a number of Solar Temple members were murdered ritualistic style or committed mass suicide. The deaths occurred, of course, in Chery and Salvan.
Real quick, sorry, I mean to just skip this. Anders Behring Breivik guy. Now, I asked you if he was an Order of the Solar Temple, and then you said something about multiple of these people. Or is there anything saying he is, or is that like up in the air?
No, it says that he was a member affiliated with the Order of the Solar Temple.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted to confirm that. So
yeah,
right,
and that there were numerous other paramilitary members who were connected to the same OTS, and not only the OTS, but apparently even they were considered to be French Nazis, apparently, and were of course apparently involved in this anti-Islamic Knights Templar, but that really just to me is just a conflation of what the Order of the Solar Temple was, because it was a Neo-Templar order, right? And so it really pretty much falls into that category of Knights Templar, but so Japanese journalists, by the way, discovered similar links between the OTS and as far as like the CIA, as they had previously discovered, existed between the same dynamic sort of existed between the CIA and the Japanese murder and suicide religious cult Aum Shinrikyo, right? Which I found very interesting. So the OTS was, I think that Julian Rodriguez is really kind of the primary link to Gladio as far as the OTS is concerned, because basically he kind of like puts into context the various overlapping AMORC, and the CIA and P2 and the Corsican Mafia and the Service d'Action Civique and France's Civic Action Service and all these different orders and how they overlap. But still, it's really important that the links with this right-wing political activist Julian Rodriguez, of whom some reports claim was a Nazi SS member during World War II, right? It becomes very interesting because the Solar Temple evolved from, of course, the original Templar order and this sort of Order of the Temple of Jerusalem, the OSMTJ, and it was really a Kabbalistic order, and that's what I think needs to be understood a little bit more. But a lot of this dates back to the Argentine Renaissance in many ways as well, which is very interesting.
I'm not trying to fuck up your shit, but we're trying to obviously do notes. So like,
my bad.
Let's back up and let's find. Yeah, no, that's fine, and but we're trying to keep them to like notes because we're going to go through a lot of different shit. I mean, and we're not even probably going to touch on all of these things on the show, but the idea is that we have all these different things we can connect into. We can go in. We can even send these over as notes because I know they usually like it. No, actually, that's now that I think about it. Yeah, we can tie. He'll like that when he's like, holy shit, look at all this. I guess let's back up. Do you have any more that you can think of to add to this? I was thinking as we were talking, are there any like program? Because we could add. I can't recall offhand, but I feel like there has to be like serial killer type, like program to kill type connections. And that might even weave into Operation Phoenix, and that kind of gives us a different theme to add to it. Nazi, child trafficking, SRA, MK Ultra, blackmail. That adds in serial killers too. So do you recall any serial killer connections that we can? Especially if it's something that like something big, like an Operation Phoenix or something that we can tie it into.
For sure. I think that first of all, fucking Colston Westbrook was Operation Phoenix. So
That's true.
that's a great
Yeah,
connection
fuck, yeah.
there.
Yeah, there's shit. I didn't even think about that. I'll put that in parentheses right here. He was past
Definitely.
Operation Phoenix. So, yeah, it's a good point. Yep. So.
And then beyond that, I mean, he was the one who set up that pipeline from Berkeley campus to that institution that had Donald Cinque DeFries and the same place that housed Manson, right, in the 50s, which is very interesting. But anyway, I think the Hand of Death cult and Lucas. I think Henry Lee Lucas is one of the greatest examples we could use. I have to take a piss real quick though.
Okay, so he's a serial killer, right? Or no?
Yeah, he's a serial killer. I'll get into that right when I get back. But one of the main things though, as well, that we should remember is that the reason I was talking about a lot of shit that I shouldn't have in regard to the Origas connection to the OTS, because he was really Origas was this well-known far right, as far as like far right paramilitary in the 1970s, and had connections with neo-fascist movements in Italy, in addition to the Green Order. So this is a Luciferian international organization, which he was a member of, the International Luciferian, and the Centre Templiar de Etudes Historiques Philosophiques et Esoteriques, founded by Alfred Zeppeli, the Grand Master of the Swiss branch of the OSMTJ. But it gets clearly connected in 1981 when Julian Origas becomes acquainted with Luc Jouret. Right. Okay. So that is, of course, one of the co-founders with Joseph de Membro. So he becomes acquainted with Luc Jouret, a Belgian ex-military official with ties to Gladio. Jouret was a friend of another Italian fascist linked to Gladio, Claudio Muti. Muti was a follower of Franco Freda, one of the leading neo-Nazi and neo-fascist intellectuals of the post-war Italian far right. So there's the direct connection. Julian Origas to the right-wing paramilitary fascist underground, what
does this connect into? Because I know that you were correcting the record from something yesterday.
Well, this is directly connecting to Gladio, right? So it's you're seeing the OTS direct connection from the Order of the Solar Temple to French Gladio, right? So this Order of the Solar Temple to French Gladio, but also directly connecting into the overlapping network of Belgian Gladio, which shouldn't surprise anyone because of how clearly connected I think French and Belgian Gladio were. And
all right, now go take a piss. I have an article I can actually read. It was actually surprised from one of you guys shared this, so I kept the tab as you guys were. But also, you guys, if you guys can think of any other, I mean, I got a handful of notes. If you guys can think of other notes to add to this, like so far as specific things that like a Operation Phoenix, SLA, Colonia Dignidad, Dutroux Affair, Finders Cult, Older Solar Temple, Jonestown, Head to Death Cult. If you can think of anything else, I mean, we've probably even talked about on this show before. If you can think of other ones we've talked about and connected into Gladio, which is kind of like a common theme of the show, which is why we're talking about a tinfoil hat, feel free to drop that in the chat. Let me know. Also drop in the comments as well, because we'll probably come back. Me and Austin will likely, I don't know if he'll be here tomorrow, but me and Austin will be doing another one of these tomorrow, and we'll probably do more notes. So we'll even refine these even further, but so you guys have time to if you have thoughts about stuff. But let's get into let's swap over to the now I gotta give me a second. Let me set this up. Here we go. This is one you guys shared this earlier. There was one of you guys made a joke about like the Nova survivors being like or like October 7th survivors or released hostages, offing themselves, a suicided type deal. Obviously, the implication being the government did something. So someone found an article on it, and I figured maybe worth reading. So let's we have time to kill right now. It says viral statistics about Nova survivors. Suicides are unsubstantiated, but survivors face a crisis. This is from December 3rd of December 2024. So this is from like 3 months ago. Eyal Golan sat at a table flanked by 2 citrus trees, and his parents. This is Jerusalem Post. In his parents' garden, the pastoral community of Porat, a makeshift office, has become reluctantly his command center. Here he has conducted dozens of media interviews about his sister Sherelle, who died by suicide at the family home on her 22nd birthday. Sherelle and her boyfriend Adi Galad were among the thousands of festival goers who fled the Nova Music Festival as Hamas terrorists began massacring revelers on October 7th, 2023. Of around 4,000 attendees, 364 were killed and several dozen taken hostage to Gaza. Okay. Now, those who survived witnessed extreme violence, including rape and mutilation, and experienced intense trauma after waiting hours in many cases for rescue. The Golan family blames the government for not doing enough to prevent his sister's death, which came after a battle with PTSD. Initially, Golan wrestled with keeping up with the media blitz during Shiva, the traditional Jewish mourning period, but his psychologist reassured him that by speaking out, he was channeling his grief into purpose. I will do everything to be her voice and the voice of her friends who are still living, he said. Those friends, by all accounts, are still struggling more than a year after Israel's deadliest day. While viral reports of dozens of suicides among Nova survivors are unsubstantiated, survivors, their families, and mental health advocates all say that Israel is facing a crisis when it comes to the mental health of those who made it out of Nova's killing fields. A Nova survivor who asked to be referred only by his initials GN said he was aware of at least 3 who are very likely going to commit suicide soon. There are so many who are technically still alive, but who basically died on October 7th. The government initially offered 12 therapy sessions for Nova survivors, later increasing it to 48. Okay, 12 seems just insulting. Although 12 does last a while, because usually I think typically therapy is like once a week or once a month, so that's not a lot. That's not nothing, but it just seems pathetic. After increasing it to 48 after Safe Heart, a group formed by volunteer therapists, after the October 7th attack that has treated more than 3,000 survivors, lobbied and said that even 48 sessions fall short of what is truly needed. In a statement issued after Sheril Golan's death, Safe Heart called for Israeli authorities to do more. Sherril's family is right. The government must step up and do more, it said. Sheril Golan was hospitalized twice because of her PTSD symptoms, which I would assume that means like a suicide attempt, I guess? I don't know. But 2 months after her death, before her death, she stopped leaving the house, refused to seek treatment, and days before, clammed up completely, her brother said. Golan warned that without additional and timely mental health support, those affected by the October 7th attack risk becoming another lost generation. Generation scarred by war and plagued by widespread disillusionment and a sense of existential loss. We saw what happened because of Germany's lost generation after World War I. It resulted in the worst calamity to befall the Jewish people. Okay. I'm not even going to finish reading this because as I'm reading this, I don't see anything that implies there's any weirdness. It's actually kind of long now that I'm going through it. So I guess there are suicides, but my point being is why you brought it up is it seems that like maybe those claims that's just something people have making jokes about, or maybe even misinfo of some sort. So all right, let's get out of there. Any last thoughts on notes, Austin, before we get out of here? We're at a good time. We probably could start doing plugs, but if you have any more ideas on notes, we can do that too. So
the last point I was gonna make was just that we should bring it to the table tomorrow, as far as at least like the introducing the concept of the serial killer connection, obviously, to Gladio, and I think there's no better example than Henry Lee Lucas and the Hand of Death cult. It's like one of the best examples, man. And so I think probably the way we could introduce it is the way I did in the Ultimate Evil, that Process Church episode that has done so well. But I honestly think it, because it's so brief and it's very, very informative at the same time, right? And basically it says a U.S. Navy psychologist who claims that the Office of Naval Intelligence had taken convicted murderers from military prisons, used behavior modification techniques on them, and then relocated them in American embassies throughout the world. The Navy psychologist was Lieutenant Commander Thomas Narut of the U.S. Regional Medical Center in Naples, Italy. The information was divulged at an Oslo NATO conference of 120 psychologists from the 11-nation alliance. The Navy provided all the funding necessary, according to Narut. Dr. Narut, in a question and answer session with reporters from many nations, revealed how the Navy was secretly programming large numbers of assassins. He said that the men he had worked with for the Navy were being prepared for commando-type operations, as well as covert operations in U.S. embassies worldwide. He described the men who went through his program as hitmen and assassins who could kill on command. Again, does this not completely align with the Psychopath Machine and Steve Smith and also the German Brotherhood, which seems like a paperclip connection to potentially another safe haven set up in fucking Canada? It's like, holy shit. So careful screening of the subjects was accomplished by Navy psychologists through the military records, and many were convicted murderers serving military prison sentences. The Ionia State Mental Hospital in Michigan was later exposed as being one of many facilities complicit in the CIA's human behavioral modification research, otherwise known as MK Ultra, mind control experiments. Convicted serial killer Henry Lee Lucas is largely considered to have been one of many criminally insane patients who were unknowingly forced into the CIA's brutal experimentation while admitted at Ionia before being paroled in 1970 and killing at least 2 women before his arrest in 1983. But it gets crazy because convicted serial killer Otis Toole, he was basically the gay lover of Henry Lee Lucas, and they went on this mass murdering crime spree. And Otis Toole, man, it's insane what he apparently they had met in Jacksonville at a soup kitchen, I guess, and they soon developed a sexual relationship, which then apparently Lucas in April of 1983, Toole was arrested for arson, and then Lucas 2 months later for killing an 82-year-old woman. But they told the story that they were members of this cannibalistic cult based in the Everglades called the Hand of Death. And it was in Max Call's book, Hand of Death, where Henry tells of his indoctrination into a nationwide satanic cult and says that he was trained by the cult in a mobile paramilitary camp in the Florida Everglades in the fine art of killing. Other training involved abduction and arson techniques. So that's where it gets into kind of like how they were actually trained at these operational facilities, these paramilitary camps, which were apparently all of them were under the impression that they were given this intelligence where they were tipped off before any flyovers would take place. So if military helicopters were to fly over the area, then they had this method in place where they basically this protocol where they could hide everything from aerial view. And so it's very interesting that was taking place because then that aligns perfectly with the JFK RFK discovered paramilitary camps nationwide domestically training up the Cuban exiles.
There's another one to add, JFK RFK. That probably is towards the top of the list. JFK RFK / RFK Cuban exile training camps. Exile training camps.
Crazy. It's so crazy, man. You know?
All right. With that, I think we're at like 2 hours, dude. I think we got a lot of good notes here, and I think we can even and once we sit on it tonight, we might be able to come up with more. I mean, we have more than enough here. I mean, for an episode, honestly. But I mean, we can form it up more. I mean, hell, even fucking if we end up with like sick notes, I mean, hell, who knows? We send this over to Sam. Who knows? Maybe be like, let's make this too. But yeah, we'll do more of this tomorrow. I think it sounds like you're gonna be back tomorrow. I'm gonna be back tomorrow. I'm gonna have the day off since he lives over in Cali, so it's got to do weird ass time. So it's like, so but yeah, with that, Austin, let people know where they can find you. We'll get out of here. We'll be back tonight actually, which I guess shit we can almost talk about this more tonight. Although I don't know if I like the idea of doing notes on Now Already Dead because it's just not the right format for it. But either way, we can shoot the shit about it a little bit. But with that, let people know where to find you. We'll be back tonight at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, and then also tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. Yeah. So stick around and pop in for those.
I might see if I can find this again because I had brought that up. What JMS just said. Joe Rogan had Python Cowboy on that found these satanic missile silos in the Everglades. There's a connection to NASA there. It's so fucking crazy. But
satanic missile silos.
Brother,
does this tie into Gladio too, or no?
So he's out there hunting pythons on like this covert black site that was an old like former black site from the Soviet Union days, right, of like the Cold War, where they were developing these clandestine weapons operations sort of, and NASA was a part of it. It was a NASA facility, and apparently the occult history of NASA is very well known, obviously, but I was unaware that Jack Parsons was affiliated with this facility, who has direct connections to obviously what's his name from Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard and right, and how many others, right? So
those are angles too. I'm pretty sure some of that stuff ties back into Gladio too. Some of the
100%,
weird, some of the weird fucking Scientology and I don't know. There's another one I'm thinking of, but yeah, Scientology.
But this
like
one's
that,
crazy because this dude is out there on like he was given government permission
Hubbard
basically by the
Scientology, right?
state. Yeah, L. Ron Hubbard
Okay,
Scientology.
yeah.
Yeah, and he directly connected to Robert de Grimston and Marianne McLean from the Process Church, who created and founded the Process. So they were Scientologists, man. Beforehand, hanging out with L. Ron Hubbard personally.
I'm just trying to think if we got a connection there, because that brings in that's just weird.
It brings in everything. It brings in Berkowitz, Manson.
That brings in NASA as a theme. So like, because I like the idea of like that, like because the whole theme was like Gladio's sort of. For one, it's like on one hand we're kind of explaining the concept of modern day Gladio, what we mean when people colloquially say modern day Gladio or Gladio in today's, and then also we're kind of going into how it's like an everything conspiracy. That's why we have Nazi stuff, SRA, MK Ultra, blackmail, serial killers. There's a NASA tie-in right there. I think if we can connect that to Gladio, which how is that too far? You think what's a big thing we can tie that into? Is there anything we can tie that into? I don't know. We can think on this tomorrow. Let's come back tomorrow. Come back fresh. I think it'd be kind of good maybe to tie in. I'll actually add question marks so it reminds us. So just remember the question marks. Let's say Scientology. Put in question marks. So question mark NASA. See if we can somehow ham fist those into it too. So it's like holy shit, it ties into all this. So
it really does because the Rosicrucian Lodge basically, right? That's you had this where was it?
Sorry. Masons.
Yeah, exactly.
Masonry. So we'll have to make those. I'm going to put question marks on those too because we need to establish the connections in the notes.
Yeah. It was the Pasadena Lodge. That was it. The Pasadena Lodge is the one that Parsons, L. Ron Hubbard, everybody was affiliated with it. Even Manson passed through. There were definitely some direct influences.
Oh, I said Masons, the Freemasons.
No, I know.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about Manson.
The Pasadena Lodge directly connects to Masons. So it's like it's a Masonic lodge.
What was it? The P2 Lodge or whatever? Fucking there you go.
Yeah, but
which P2 ties into just original Gladio, doesn't it? So
yeah. Yeah.
So okay, we can just do OG Gladio for actually. Fuck, 100%. How do we not even include OG Gladio in the fucking?
Yeah, I do have. We could easily introduce it that way.
OG Gladio. Yeah, we at least can run over real quick, and that's where we can get P2. That's where we can make the P2. So I can take off the question marks of Freemasons. We already established that. Literally, OG Gladio immediately ties it into fucking. 100%. Which there's an Opus Dei connection as we talk about too with Dutroux, so we can throw that in there. Opus Dei, so just kind of as a little side bonus. So connection. So there we go. There you go. Okay, I'll even throw Opus Dei at the top, although Opus Dei kind of goes hand in hand with like Masons. Just secret society. So yeah. No, actually, no. I'm just going to put secret society to cover both. Secret societies. There you go. Yeah. All right, cool. You want to go do your plugs, bud? We'll get out of here. So before we keep getting caught up on the next thing.
My bad.
No, you're good. That was my fault too. I'm just thinking of these things on the fly. So
right. Yeah, guys, you already know. Check out the Underclass podcast, man. Support it if you can, and follow me on Instagram or Twitter. And beyond that, man, go support the Patreon. I'm actually attempting to incentivize you guys at this point. So. Do me the favor.
You got 2 Sam episodes up there now too, completely behind the paywall. So give this man some fucking money. Maybe help you in the next one. With that, you're okay. Do you get all your plugs out? Sorry, I was zoned out.
I think so. Okay. I don't really have much else to plug.
Yeah. Well, for those who want to support what I'm doing, you can do that without giving me any money. If you want to like, share, subscribe, comment, it doesn't take you hardly any time to do any of those things. You can also follow me on Twitter at Tagging Jose. Tag me and stuff. If you see anything, you're like, oh, Jose would like this, or Austin would like this, tag us. We use those a lot. I use them probably in the realm of like 80 to 90% of the time. So that helps a bunch. But yeah, so like, share, subscribe, comment, follow me on the socials. But if you really want to support this channel, the best way to do that is with money. Cash is king, baby. Patreon.com/NoWayJose2020 is the place to do that at. I do want to... the lowest level is where it's $2 where you get early access to the episodes. Like, for example, I have a OKC bombing with Jonathan Franklin and Richard Booth. And I also have a True Detective behind the paywall, which is going to be a thing going forward. I'm going to start recording 2 of these episodes a week as opposed to 1. I'm going to put a little bit of a queue. That way there's ones in case I miss episodes. So I think I'm probably going to get to the place where I have 2 to 4 at all times behind the paywall probably. So that's where I'm going. So just guys, and we'll probably in the future, once I have enough behind the paywall, I'll start releasing 2 a week since I'm recording 2 a week. So we'll have a good little repository in the paywall, and then also you pores will get 2 now, 2 a week, and then also you can get ad-free RSS feed. You can also be a talking head on Already Dead with me and Austin. That's the second half of the show. We do a call in, and you can jump on there. I also have my sponsors. You can those are that's the highest level. You can those God, I'm gonna brain fart. I read them off every episode to show them my love. And then I have my co-host on Tower Gang at Tower Gang Toad. Also have at Abrogate D's at ZOVRACK at _ Zeal. Tim Tuttle at Jolly on Klebold. And Will Bell's Delicious Blueberry Rabbit Eye Wine. Big fan of the show. Torn May. Then at INWARD Lover. And I totally forgot to do this earlier. My bad. But I mean, hey, I've been doing a ton of these lately. So I do want to remind you guys this episode is brought to you by Nadeau Shave Co. If you're tired of that razor burn irritation that comes from that expensive bullshit, those multi-bladed cartridges, this is the way to go. Just to run through it real quick, this is a better product. It's going to give you a better shave. It's going to be better for your face. I mean, those 5-blade razor things or whatever the fuck they got, that's like 5 times as much as fucking up your face. Also, this is a COVID mandate refusing company, so it's cheaper too. I left that out. So like these are way cheaper than those multi-blades. You run through, it's like 70, I forget the exact, I think it's $75 for the year is what it runs yet. But let's be real, it's going to last you a lot longer than that. It's lasted a lot longer for me. So it's a cheaper product. It's a better product. It's from a company that doesn't hate your guts. It's a COVID mandate refusing company. And on top of all that, you can use Jose at checkout for 10% off your entire order. With that, guys, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Love you all. JMS, I expect you guys solid dump. All I do is dump solid, dog. But with that, we're out of here. Deuces. We'll see you tomorrow and tonight. So we're out of here.